Chapter 1403. On the other hand, Chun Zhao was having a great time chatting with Knots. Unlike the people in the association who always had to put on airs, Chun Zhao really learned a lot from Knots. At the very least, everyone looked at things from a different perspective. Knots was a bit of a teacher, but other than that, there wasn't anything wrong with her. Just then, the lights in the restaurant lit up. The sky outside the window seemed to have darkened. Dark clouds covered all of Los Angeles. Just then, the TV hanging in the restaurant reported a piece of news. According to the weather satellite, the first Pacific tropical cyclone of the year would land on the West Coast in the next 3 days. The wind could reach level 16. This weather is so uncomfortable. Chun Zhao looked outside the window. The dark clouds reminded him of the sky when he'd fought the source of corruption. This time, the sky was similar, but he didn't feel any magical aura. It's been 13 years since the last reverse tropical cyclone made landfall on the West Coast. Every time a reverse tropical cyclone makes landfall on the West Coast, it brings something unclean, Nawat said. There's something like that. In the East, it's called a typhoon. In North America, it's called a hurricane. But most tropical cyclones move along the path of the Earth's rotation. In China's Taoism, it's called gathering the sun. Typhoons bring destruction, but they also bring life, Knott said. Reverse tropical cyclones go against the Earth's rotation, so it's called ascending to the underworld. Chun Zhao basically knew nothing about Taoism. He wasn't even as knowledgeable as a foreigner like Knott's. What's ascending to the underworld? It blows energy to the West Coast, Knott said. Normal people will get sick when exposed to large amounts of energy, so I can foresee that there'll be a lot of sick people on the West Coast in the future. That's great. Great? Why? I'm a doctor, Chun Zhao said matter-of-factly. Is there anything more enjoyable than more patients? Also, it's best not to go out when a tropical cyclone passes by, in case you get into trouble. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. Who would go out during a typhoon? The last time a tropical cyclone landed in North America, it also blew a ghost ship to the West Coast. It was just a ghost ship. Chun Zhao didn't care at all. Of course, it was best not to go out during typhoon. Fei Lai's due date was in a few days. He had to send her to the hospital as soon as possible. It would be troublesome if Typhoon Tyamphily gave birth. When Chun Zhao walked out of the restaurant, a green bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Chun Zhao frowned. It was windy. The wind was really uncomfortable. The tropical cyclone hadn't even made landfall yet, but they could already feel the threatening yin-chi in the wind. Navots frowned as well. What's wrong, Singer? Daily Moore asked. This pressure reminds me of the third night that happened in downtown Los Angeles 2 years ago. Chun Zhao was about to part ways with them, but after hearing Navot's words, he couldn't help but ask, do you think this tropical cyclone is similar to third night? I can't say for sure, but the signs of weather change will only appear on the third night. According to the weather station's weather report, the tropical cyclone will make landfall in 3 days. If someone was awakening for the third night, it would be impossible for this sign to appear on the first day. I still have something to do. I'm leaving. Chun Zhao's expression suddenly turned serious. Looking at Chun Zhao's departing figure, Navots touched her left arm. Daily Moore, it's best not to go out these few days. What's wrong? Is it because of the hurricane? Did you forget what I said? Last time, a ghost ship was blown ashore. People really died then. Navots looked around again. This is really uncomfortable. Singer, come stay at my place for a few days, Daily Moore said. I'm a bit scared by myself. I'm also planning to give my employees a few days off. I'll go back to work after the tropical cyclone passes. Sure. Nawats Singh looked around, the uncomfortable feeling getting more obvious. Daily Moore, you drive. Sitting in the car, Nawats Singh started using magic. Dahlia had been learning magic from Navots for a while. She could feel the mana undulations coming from Navots' body. However, she didn't understand what spell Navots was using from the car. Suddenly, images flashed through Navots' mind. A pair of eyes was staring at her. That bad feeling came from that pair of eyes staring at him. Daily Moore, stop the car. I might need to deal with some trouble. Here? There's so many people here. Are you sure you want to fight someone here? I don't want to cause trouble for you. I'm your student. Did you forget? Navots hesitated for a moment. All right then, drive the car to a more secluded place. Do you know who's causing trouble for you? I'm probably from a Roma family, Navot said. I don't have any enemies. It can only be people from my family. Why would someone from the same family cause trouble for you? My family has a custom. Every awakened witch in the family can inherit a magic tool. Of course, I also inherited a magic tool. Magic tools are very rare, and the number of magic tools in the family is limited. It's first come, first served, and the latecomers don't have a chance. They either have to wait for the previous witch to die and then inherit it, or snatch it from other witches. The people who came to find trouble with me probably had this intention. Through my ESP vision, I felt that those eyes belonged to people that I've seen before. No matter how I counted, there were only a few people that I had seen before. What magic tool did you inherit? Nawat's shingles pointed to the earrings in her ears. Dailymore looked at Navot's earrings. They were made of silver and had 2 small stars on them. The design was quite unique. Chapter 1404. This place is fine, Nawat Singh said. This place was remote enough that they couldn't see any buildings in front or behind them. Is someone following us? Daramore asked hesitantly. He's already here. Where? There are no cars on the road. Navot's looked to the side of the road. She had already sensed the person's location. Come out, Ocula. A gust of wind blew past, and a red-haired woman walked out. The woman wore exquisite makeup, a black dress, and dark red high heels. Her wavy hair was wrapped around her chest, and she crossed her arms as she walked over. Hi, sister. Ocula waved her hand lightly with a charming smile on her face. Dailymore turned to look at Navot Singh. Your sister? Nawat looked at Ocula coldly. It was obvious that the relationship between the 2 sisters was not good. It could even be said to be bad, very bad. Are you going to show off your little animals again? Nawat Singh's tone carried a hint of mockery. The corner of Ocula's mouth twitched. Her sister's words had clearly hit her sore spot. But very quickly, Ocula regained his composure. It's different this time. I found a new toy. Just as Navot was about to release the weakness mirror image, he suddenly remembered that the weakness mirror image he used before hadn't been removed. Navot raised his left arm. Just as he was about to remove the weakness image, a sudden gust of wind blew past. A bloody mouth bit down on Navot Singh's left arm. Dahlia was startled. It was a jackal with gray spots all over its body, but this jackal was a little scary. When Ocula saw that Navot Singh was hit, he became more and more pleased with himself. At that moment, an even larger jackal appeared beside Ocula. Dozens of equally large jackals surrounded Nawat and Dailymore. These giant jackals seemed to have appeared out of thin air. He hadn't even noticed their existence before. Sister, aren't you surprised now? Ocula said proudly. I named them wind-howling beasts. They were modified by a pack of jackals. Nawat said coldly, you still haven't changed your old tricks. You're still using invisible wind and gigantification. Other than that, you don't have any other tricks. But you still fell for it. It doesn't matter if it's an old trick or not, as long as it works. It works? Nawat sneered and suddenly pulled with force with his left arm. Awoo! The jackal that was biting Nawat's left arm suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech and fell to the ground, spitting out blood. Ocula's expression changed drastically. What was going on? Why wasn't she hurt? Could it be that Nawat's learned enhancement magic? Ocula's face was filled with confusion, but she didn't hesitate and immediately ordered the other jackals to attack Nawat Singh. Only then did Nawat truly use the power of his left arm. The weak spot mirror image could copy the enemy's weak spot, but it would also copy the characteristics of that spot. However, Nawat also didn't understand why his left arm, which was supposed to be his weak spot, was so terrifying. A jackal pounced on her. Nawat didn't even have time to react, but her left arm had already reacted. Nawat raised her left arm and grabbed the jackal's head in the air. Then she crushed it. This action stunned both Dailymore and Ocula. Dailymore had heard from Nawat that she wasn't good at fighting. But now, it seemed that Nawat was being too humble when she said that she wasn't good at fighting. Ocula felt even more incredulous. Daily Moore might have thought that Navat's Shingles was being modest, but Okula Shingles knew her sister very well. She didn't understand why her sister, who wasn't good at fighting, would suddenly change her style. Moreover, she chose the enhancement magic that didn't suit her at all. It was like changing subjects halfway through a university course. She'd been studying math, but she went to practice sports. Very few witches would play enhancement magic. On one hand, it was because women's stamina wasn't as good as men's, so their enhancement magic wasn't as effective. On the other hand, witches generally had higher magic power than men. They had more choices than enhancement magic. But why did Navat Singh, who was not trained properly, have such great power? As a matter of fact, even Navat herself was dumbfounded. His left arm was supposed to be his weakness, but wasn't a little too obvious? Just then, two more jackals attacked from the left and right. Navat Singh's left arm was faster, and his methods were more brutal. She grabbed the car beside her and swung around. The two jackals were smashed to pieces. Although these jackals were controlled by Okula Singh, they weren't mindless creatures. They were also fearful. After Navats killed a few of their companions, no jackals dared to come forward anymore. Navats was envious of her left arm that didn't belong to her. Not only did this left arm possess immense strength, but its instinctive reaction had also become muscle memory. She didn't even need to worry. The arm could sense battle and danger on its own. Unfortunately, Weakness Mirror had a time limit. It would probably be over in a few minutes. It seemed that the man was stronger than she'd imagined. However, was his left arm really his weakness? Was it so strong and hard to deal with? Or had her spell gone wrong? She hadn't used Weakness Mirror just now, but Ability Mirror. Unlike Weakness Mirror Image, Ability Mirror Image was more difficult to cast. Nawat's Shingles had been practicing it for years and still hadn't learned it. Could it be that he had accidentally used his mirror image ability? Was that why she'd gotten Chen Zhao's ability? In fact, his true strength was in his left arm? Ocula, disappear from my sight immediately. Otherwise, I might not be able to control myself and crush your jaw. Okula's face was ashen. He had come to find Navats with confidence, but he didn't expect to be slapped in the face by her. Chapter 1405. After Okula Singh left, Nawat Singh suddenly sat on the ground. Seeing this, Daily Moore hurried over to help Navat Singh. Singh, what's wrong? I'm fine. Let me sit on the ground for a while. Navat Singh had a good time just now, but that arm wasn't hers. As the magic disappeared, the burden came with it. You had to pay interest when you borrowed something from someone else. If Okula hadn't been scared away, Navats would probably have lost. Do we go to the hospital? Daily Moore asked. Navats shook her head. She couldn't even be bothered to talk now. After sitting on the ground for more than half an hour, she finally got into the car with Daily Moore's help. The car had been swung around by Navats, but apart from some blood and two not-so-obvious dents, there wasn't any other damage. Singh, what happened just now? That was the ability spell I used on Mr. Chen earlier, Navat said. I borrowed his strongest ability. Navats was now very sure that he must have accidentally used his mirror image ability. Is this the power of strengthening magic? Yes, strengthening magic is best at fighting. It has powerful attack and resistance, but its weakness is also very obvious, Navat said. It's too much of a burden on the body. Seeing Chen Zhao return, Fei Lai's expression became nervous. Chen, what's wrong? Fei Lai, I think you're due soon. How about we go to the hospital? No. Fei Lai shook her head immediately. According to the weather report, a tropical cyclone might land on the west coast in the next 3 days. Then we'll wait for it to pass. Can you control the child in your stomach? Of course. She listens to me. Chen Zhao was helpless. Fei Lai was so determined, so he could only give up on sending her to the hospital for now. Let me do a check. Chen Zhao started examining Fei Lai and the baby in her stomach. It wasn't just a routine check. Chen Zhao also used magic to check their vitals. Suddenly, he sensed that the baby's heart rate was extremely low. Chen Zhao was shocked. He glanced at Fei Lai from the corner of his eye, but his expression did not change. A fetus heart rate was usually higher than an adult's, but their child heart rate was so low that Chen Zhao had to be careful. There were many possibilities for a low fetal heart rate. It could be a problem with the mother, but Fei Lai was healthy and paid attention to her diet. There shouldn't be any problems. Otherwise, it was the fetus's own problem. Although the child hadn't been born yet, he was already conscious. Even in her stomach, the child was still very active. Perhaps he was tired of playing. Chen Zhao was very nervous. Had this always been a problem, or had it just appeared? Is there a problem with the child's development? He had been to the hospital several times before, but there were no problems with the child's development. Then it should be a temporary problem. He sent his magic power into Fei Lai's body. As expected, Chen Zhao realized that the child was wrapping the umbilical cord around his neck, but he couldn't break free. In the end, he choked himself until he fainted. Chen Zhao was a bit angry. This little bastard hadn't even been born yet, and he was already looking for trouble for himself and his mother. If he'd wrapped the umbilical cord like this on the day of delivery, he wouldn't have been able to give birth naturally. Thankfully, the umbilical cord wasn't completely tied up. After the little bastard fainted, it loosened on its own. The little bastard suddenly moved and opened his eyes. He seemed to have seen something. Chen Zhao suddenly realized that his magic power was being absorbed. Fei Lai wasn't a spiritualist. She couldn't absorb magic power. Chen Zhao frowned. Was it the little bastard absorbing the magic power? Just then, the little bastard fell into a deep sleep again. But now, his body was much more stable. Chen Zhao heaved a sigh of relief. Fei Lai rubbed her stomach gently. Just then, another emergency alert appeared on the TV. According to the satellite photos sent by NASA to the Weather Bureau, a tropical cyclone was evolving in the Pacific Ocean 1,400 kilometers southwest of the West Coast. The winds at the center of the tropical cyclone had reached 200 kilometers per hour, reaching the peak of a Category 3 hurricane. At present, the tropical cyclone was still strengthening. In the next 24 hours, the tropical cyclone was likely to reach Category 5 or above. The Weather Bureau officially named the cyclone Wish. Chen Zhao found it hard to breathe. He could feel that the cyclone was coming for his family. It was a life-and-death crisis. What was a Category 5 hurricane? The Weather Bureau divided hurricanes into 5 levels. A speed of 119 to 153 kilometers per hour was Category 1. 154 to 177 kilometers per hour was Category 2. 178 to 209 kilometers per hour was Category 3. 210 to 248 kilometers per hour was Category 4. And 249 kilometers per hour or above was Category 5. The tropical cyclone was forming now. It hadn't reached its peak yet, but it had already reached Category 3. This meant that when it hit the West Coast, it might reach Category 5 or above. How much damage could a Category 5 hurricane cause? A Category 5 hurricane in 2005 had caused $200 billion in economic losses. 2,000 people had died and hundreds of thousands had lost their homes. This was America, the most developed country in the world. Of course, America's rescue system had always been criticized by others. If it was just a hurricane, Chen Zhao wouldn't care. But he was afraid that it wasn't just a hurricane. If that was the death of the little bastard in Fei Lai's stomach, then today would be the first night. The hurricane would come the day after tomorrow. What if Fei Lai went into labor? No, not if. Fei Lai would definitely go into labor the night after tomorrow. Chen Zhao couldn't help Fei Lai give birth and protect her at the same time. It was impossible to send Fei Lai to the hospital. If he did, there might be more casualties. Chen Zhao called for, take tomorrow and the day after tomorrow off. Come to my house. Why? I'm a bit busy with work. Your sister's labor will be in these 2 days. You can send her to the hospital. I don't plan on sending her to the hospital, Chen Zhao said. Also, I've never delivered a baby before. Me neither. I'm an oncologist. I know how to deliver a baby, but I've never done it. I trust you. Fu was going crazy. She didn't understand what Chen Zhao was doing. What's the use of trusting me? You're going to bet Fei Lai and her baby? Chapter 1406. Fu hurried to Mirror Lake and stared at Chen Zhao and Fei Lai aggressively. Actually, Fei Lai didn't know what Chen Zhao meant either. Don't look at me. Ask Chen if you have any questions, Failai said as she caressed her big belly. The hurricane is coming the day after tomorrow. I'm afraid that the hospital will lose power that night. The hospital has a backup generator. For looked at Chun Zhao. You're not worried at all. It's a tradition from my hometown. Do you think I'm an idiot? For stared at Chun Zhao with a dark expression. Actually, Failai said that she wants to give birth at home. Did I say that? I thought you didn't want to go to the hospital? For stared at Chun Zhao. Chun, tell me honestly. Why? As long as you help me this time, I'll give you as much purple brew, nameless wine, and Dashin beer as you want this year and tomorrow. For also knew that Chun Zhao had made daydream, purple brew, nameless wine, and Dashin beer. However, due to her income, she really couldn't afford anything other than Dashin beer. Although she also belonged to the high-income group, the price of the first 3 types of wine was not something that ordinary middle-class people could afford. Chun, are you sure you want Failai to take the risk? Neither you nor I are gynecologists. There's also no hospital here to deliver a baby. It'll be risky for both of us. I can create the conditions. Chun Zhao in Blackie's lab was in Blackie's spatial crevice. There were many medical tools and equipment inside. As long as Chun Zhao brought out the instruments and tools, it would be fine. It wasn't a big problem. The problem was tools, equipment, and equipment are not a problem. I have all the equipment for delivering a baby. I'll set up an operating room tonight. The basement was a semi-enclosed space. Even if there was a hurricane or even a flood, as long as the stairs were sealed, the basement wouldn't be affected. But there's another problem that you need to be prepared for. What problem? You might be the only one when delivering the baby. What do you mean? You're going out? Failai's about to give birth. You're going out? For asked. I'm not going out. I just said that I might be busy with other things while delivering Failai. What are you busy with? What's more important than Failai's labor? For stop asking. Failai had a premonition. Are you busy with something? Anyway, it's very complicated. Don't ask anymore. Of course it's complicated if I don't explain it clearly. Once I explain it clearly, it won't be complicated anymore. For stubbornly wanted to know the truth. For was very familiar with Chun Zhao. His medical skills were excellent, and he loved Failai very much. It was understandable if he wanted to deliver Failai himself. Geniuses were always extreme. They were more willing to believe in themselves than others. However, Chun Zhao didn't want to send Failai to the hospital. He also didn't want to help her deliver the baby. This was hard for Four to understand. To put it simply, on the day Failai gives birth, bad people will come and steal her child. So, I need you to deliver the baby, and I'll protect it. Do you understand? Why not hand it over to the police? How much do you think the police can do in a Category 5 hurricane? Who wants to steal your child? What a bunch of lunatics. Are you serious? For stared at Chun Zhao seriously. Of course. Would I joke with Failai's and the child's lives? For rubbed her forehead. Fine, I'll believe you for now. But I'm really not confident that I could deliver Failai's child alone. Chun Zhao rubbed his chin and thought for a while. How about I kidnap a team of gynecologists from the hospital? You're kidding me. Finally comforting Four, Failai couldn't help but ask at night. Chun, what's going on? Our child might be a witch, Chun Zhao said helplessly. Failai's face was filled with surprise. Really? Our child is a witch? Do you have to be so excited? Of course. Our child will definitely inherit your magic talent. Okay, rest first. I'll go prepare for the surgery. The best outcome would be a natural delivery, but it was necessary to be safe. Chun Zhao didn't want any problems on this. For Failai's delivery, Chun Zhao had to consider all aspects. There was also another piece of news that made Chun Zhao uneasy. The tropical cyclone had strengthened to Category 5 as it approached the west coast, and it was currently traveling at 260 kilometers per hour. The hurricane that had caused great damage on the west coast in 2005 had a speed of 280 kilometers per hour. The tropical cyclone, this time, was approaching the speed of the last one, and there were still about 48 hours left. Based on the development of the witch, this tropical cyclone was still showing signs of strengthening. It might even reach 300 kilometers per hour. The destructive power of a 300 kilometers per hour hurricane wasn't just the wind, but also the huge waves. Moreover, the Mirror Lake villa that Robio had designed for Chun Zhao could only reach 250 kilometers per hour at most. If the wind exceeded 300 kilometers per hour, it would cause great damage to the villa. Of course, this wasn't the main problem. The main problem was the safety of Phalai for Jerlin and the little witch in Phalai's stomach. Chun Zhao wanted to ask the association for help. They actually weren't weak. However, they didn't have to face the attack of the third night first, but the storm. Under the wind of 300 kilometers per hour, Chun Zhao would give them a promotion and a raise if they could stand still, let alone fight. Eugenius, can you make the trees around Mirror Lake grow taller? Master, this requires more magic. Chun Zhao took out more angelic crystals. As a tree spirit, Eugenius was the only one among Chun Zhao's pets that could use angelic crystals. Moreover, angelic crystals could promote the growth of plants. I'll give you as much as you want. Make these plants grow to their limit. Black Ma, White Ma, go chase the cows and sheep into the forest, especially when the storm comes. Don't let the wind blow our cows away. Amon, if the wind is blowing from the other side of Mirror Lake, once it forms a wave, you'll be responsible for calming it down. If the wave is more than 5 meters high, I'll make you swim around the Pacific Ocean 10 times. Chapter 1407. The next morning, Fu was astonished by the surgery room that Chun Zhao had assembled in one night. The water in this tank is from the lake, Chun Zhao said. It can be used for water delivery. Don't worry about the water quality. It won't harm Phalai or the baby, nor will it get infected. Water delivery was a type of painless delivery, but the analgesic effect wasn't great. Phalai might not use this method when she was in labor. Right now, painless delivery technology was very mature. Chun Zhao had even prepared an analgesic device for intraspinal delivery. Chun, do you know how to inject analgesics into the spinal canal? I don't. Chun Zhao shook his head. I don't know either, Fu said. Chun Zhao and Fu knew the theory, but they needed clinical experience to actually do it. Then we better find an anesthetist. An anesthetist with a painless delivery certificate had to have interned with the attending for at least a year, observing or assisting more than 20 times. Only then could he have the right to do it alone. Anesthesia for pregnant women was injected into the spinal canal. The technology was very mature, but there was a strict limit to the amount of injection. Usually, it was injected into the subarachnoid space. Too much wouldn't be good for the mother or the baby, but too little wouldn't have the analgesic effect. Moreover, the analgesic process was continuous. It would be injected every few to 10 minutes. Different levels of analgesic would be given according to the mother's pain level. Do you know a doctor? Chun Zhao asked. Yes. Invite him over. It's best if he comes today. He can ask for the pay. You didn't say that to me, Fu said. If you want, I can say the same to you. Fu actually didn't lack money. After all, Winip had such a large business. If she needed money, she could just call her mother. Even if she called Chun Zhao, he would give her a blank check. Fu and Phalai both had the right to inherit Winip's wealth. Of course, the sisters didn't seem interested. A cesarean section could also be considered a painless delivery, except for the preparation of analgesic injections. Chun Zhao also prepared normal cesarean equipment and an operating table. Chun, can you tell me who's trying to steal my child? Go ask Phalai. If she's willing to tell you, she'll naturally tell you. Okay. For plan to ask Phalai later. Are the sterilization conditions in place? Even if Fu trusted Chun Zhao's preparations, disinfection was the most basic requirement. However, this wasn't the isolated operating room in the hospital, so Fu had to ask. Yes, there's a high-powered air purification converter installed over there. Remember to turn on the air purification converter every time you open the staircase. Our hospital has this equipment too. It's at least 800,000, Fu said. Did you prepare this for Phalai? Actually, I already have it, Chun Zhao said. Originally, this equipment was prepared in the laboratory in the space crevice. Is there anything else I need to prepare? You'd better give me a list. Fu had indeed given him many more lists, some of which he hadn't prepared. It wasn't a necessity, but an emergency item. Most of the equipment, tools, and drugs were for Chun Zhao and Blackie's experiments. It was not specially prepared for midwifery, so there were still some shortcomings. Therefore, he had to prepare everything today. He could only go out to prepare. Okula, you actually failed? Mr. Warren, my sister suddenly mastered enhancement magic, and it's a powerful enhancement magic. Okula Singh stood in front of the man with his head lowered. You're really useless, Warren said coldly. At this moment, the jackals around Okula all growled at Warren with their teeth bared. They were all loyal servants of Oculus Singh. Okula quickly restrained the jackals. She didn't want to offend Warren. A mere enhancement spell actually defeated you. You disappoint me, Warren said. It seems that I have to do it myself. Okula's expression couldn't help but change. Mr. Warren, please give me another chance. This time, I will definitely get it. I don't have time to waste on you. Warren glanced at Okula coldly. With that, Warren turned around and left, leaving Oculus standing on the spot hesitantly. At the moment, Navots and Delamore were shopping. The storm was coming, but as long as it hadn't arrived, people wouldn't stop enjoying life. Merchants wouldn't stop doing business either. On the streets of Beverly Hills, all the luxury stores were still welcoming customers. Both carried big and small bags. That was women's nature. Even though they were both witches, they were more interested in shopping and discussing luxury goods. Suddenly, Navot's body froze. Daily Moore turned around and saw that Navot's body seemed to be frozen. Singh, what's wrong? Navot Singh's expression turned ugly. What's wrong? There's an enemy. Navot's body was frozen, but her eyes could still move. She stared ahead and finally locked onto a figure. The trader of the Roma, Warren Jerem. He was different from a family like the Singh family that basically abandoned Roma traditions. Warren Jerem wasn't abandoning Roma traditions. Instead, he was completely going against Roma traditions. He was doing something that was strictly forbidden and taboo. This was similar to one choosing to emigrate, and the other choosing to break the law in his own country. It was more or less the same. Of course, what Waylon Jerem did was far worse than breaking the law. Navots chanted a magic incantation. Weakness, mirror image. Dahlia Moore, stab me in the neck with your brooch, not Singh said. Delamore immediately took off her brooch and stabbed it into Navot's neck. Then Warren Jerem, who was standing opposite her, grabbed his neck. Navot's freezing spell was suddenly lifted. Go, let's go. Navots glanced at Warren Jerem and turned to leave. Are we going home? No. Do you know where Mr. Chun lives? You're going to find Mr. Chun? Why are you looking for him? The person who attacked me just now is very powerful. And I can't fight him. We can only borrow Mr. Chin's ability. Chapter 1408. Can Mr. Chin's ability fight against him? Mr. Chun has an enhancement ability, and it's very powerful. As long as he uses it properly, he can eliminate most of that person's combat power. Dahlia Moore brought Nawat Singh to Mirror Lake. Navots instantly sensed the spiritual energy in the air. So many elements. It's a spiritualist paradise. It was Daily Moore's second time here, but the feeling was the same as the first time. She didn't find anything different from other places except for the fresher air. Is it good here? Very good, Nawat Singh said. My family also has an elemental territory, a place for the awakened to train. But the elemental concentration in that place is at least 3 times lower than here, said Nawat Singh. The car stopped in front of the villa. Daily Moore walked to the door with complicated feelings and knocked. Just then, an unfamiliar woman opened the door. Daily Moore didn't know the woman. Could she be Chun Zhao's lover? Is Mr. Chun here? Chun went out. How can I help you? When will he be back? Daily Moore asked. Can I go in and wait for him? For was a bit hesitant. She'd heard that someone wanted to steal Chun Zhao and Fail Eye's child, so she was quite worried. Now that 2 unfamiliar women had come, she couldn't help but think. I'll call and ask Chun. Of course. Go ahead. For called Chun Zhao right in front of Daily Moore and Nawat Singh. Hey, Chun, there are 2 ladies at the door. They want to see you, For said. What are their names? For looked at Daily Moore. Before she could ask, Daily Moore seemed to know what she wanted to ask. She said, first, I'm Daily Moore. She's Nawat Singh. Let them stay for now and wait for me, Chun Zhao said. When Daly Moore and Navots Singh entered the living room, they saw the pregnant Phalai. "Madam, I'm very sorry about what happened last time." Daly went up to apologize. "It's okay," Phalai replied gently. A while later, Chun Zhao returned. A woman got off the car with him. "Miss Yala, please come in." Shara looked at the mansion. 2 days at most? I can get $200,000. Of course, I promise. Chun Zhao nodded. Shayla was the anesthesiologist found through 4. She was also the best anesthesiologist and anesthetist in Chantilly Hospital. Chun Zhao, on the other hand, was practicing medicine illegally, so he also gave her a very high price, $200,000 for 2 days. Chun Zhao was an illegal doctor himself, so he knew how much it would cost for a legal doctor to practice medicine illegally. Daly Moore and Navots Singh stood up when they saw Chun Zhao come in. "Shara, have a chat with 4. Then take a look at my surgery room. I still have some personal matters to attend to." Shara nodded and walked to 4 and Phalai. "Lady Daly Moore, Miss Knotts, let's have a chat." The 2 girls followed him out of the house. "What can I do for you two?" "Mr. Chun, I'd like to borrow your ability," Knotts said. "Borrow my ability? How?" Chun Zhao asked, confused. "Mirror image," Knotts said. "My spell. As long as it doesn't affect me, you can borrow it." "I don't mind," Chun Zhao said calmly. "But I'm not sure when I need to borrow it, because I'm not sure when my enemies will appear. You can't have me follow you, right? If that's the case, you might as well let me help you." Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. "Also, I'm busy these 2 days." "Oh, since you're a perception type, what level can your perception type magic reach?" "Mr. Chun, what level do you need?" "There are many types of perception type magic, and I know many of them. I need a perception type ability like a strategic radar. I can sense the number of enemies within a certain range. This spell isn't difficult. I don't want a one-time perception," Chun Zhao said. "I want it to last at least 5 hours." 5 hours? The first thing Knotts thought of was the Night of Awakening, because it lasted from 8 at night to 1 in the morning. Knotts asked again, "Is there anyone in that room who's going to awaken?" "That's none of your business. Can you do it?" "I can't last that long," Nawat said. The spell wasn't difficult, but it was a consumptive spell. It used up a lot of mana. There was no way she could continue to use this spell for hours on end. "I can only use it a dozen times at most. These are mana potions." Chun Zhao tossed the 2 bottles to Navots. The potions were like a drop in the bucket for Chun Zhao. "If there are potions, I can double it." Knotts didn't expect Chun Zhao to be willing to give her such a precious potion. "Tonight?" "No, tomorrow night," Chun Zhao said. "Second night?" Knotts' expression changed. "No, it's too dangerous." "Then forget it." "Go ahead," Chun Zhao replied coldly. He didn't force it. Nawats Hingis and Daly Moore had left. It was mainly Knotts. She felt that it was too risky. The second night was such a terrifying thing. "Singer, are we really just going to stand by and watch?" Daly Moore had wanted to use this to deepen her intimacy with Chun Zhao. "Delamore, it's not that I don't want to watch, but it's really too dangerous. You don't understand what the second night means at all. He's not alone. He has companions, like Gaia," Delamore said. Gaia said that she's confident that she can protect the second night alone. One person can't protect the second night alone. Maybe not alone, but Gaia is still very powerful. I saw it with my own eyes. You're saying that we shouldn't watch. If we help Mr. Chun, he probably won't watch if we're in trouble in the future." Knotts thought deeply for a long time and suddenly stepped on the brakes. "Maybe you're right." Chapter 1409. Chun Zhao was a bit surprised that Nawat Singh and Dahlia Moore had returned. Originally, he wasn't angry that they'd left. After all, normal spiritualists would have a hard time dealing with the first night alone. They'd probably piss their pants when they heard that it was the second night. No one had the obligation to sacrifice themselves for someone else. "Mr. Chun, we're willing to help you guard the second night, but if the situation deteriorates, we'll still leave." "I don't need you to fight," Chun Zhao said. "You just need to help me detect the enemies in a large area." "Are you sure you don't need me to fight?" Navots asked. "We can all help you more or less. Using your perception magic will be the greatest help," Chun Zhao said. To Navots, Chun Zhao was still a bit arrogant. Chun Zhao still had something to consider. Should he keep Jerlin at home or send her to the association? Jerlin, are you going to Antigaya? No, Jerlin is staying. Jerlin wants to be the first to see the birth of a little sister. How do you know it's a little sister? Maybe it's a little brother. No, it's a little sister, Jerlin said firmly, as if answering Chun Zhao's question with a predetermined answer. Chun Zhao smiled. Of course, he knew that his second child was also a daughter. Daily Moore, Navots, Shera, Four, and Fei Lai, as well as Chun Zhao, who was carrying Jerlin, sat at various places at the dining table. Chun Zhao was the one who'd cooked tonight. Daily Moore was the first to speak. Mr. Chun, your cooking skills are really good. I need a chef at home. Of course, Daily Moore was only joking. Not counting her parents' wealth, Chun Zhao was richer than her. When I lose my job, I'll consider going to your house to be a chef. No one would take a joke seriously. Chun Zhao wasn't someone who couldn't take a joke. I heard that the hurricane that landed on the West Coast this time is already faster than the one in 2005, Shera said. Shera said, Mr. Chun, your villa can withstand a hurricane with a speed of over 300 kilometers per hour, right? The surrounding forest can slow down the wind. When this villa was built, it was designed to defend against Category 5 hurricanes. In addition, the upper and lower floors of the villa have two different architectural structures. They can be completely enclosed. That is to say, even if the upper floor of the villa is completely destroyed and submerged by the lake, the lower floor can be completely enclosed. There are enough food reserves and landlines in the lower floor. In addition, there is a passage to Mirror Lake in the second basement. As long as you can hold your breath for a minute, you can safely swim to the outside. Hearing that, Shera felt much more at ease. Moreover, in the face of a hurricane with winds of over 300 kilometers per hour, it might not be safe to stay in the hospital. Compared to China, which had long been accustomed to typhoons and was more experienced in this area, whether it was the country or the state governments, they had never had any experience in preventing hurricanes. Even if they caused catastrophic consequences, they might not take action. The tragedy in 2005 was enough to illustrate all of this. Of the nearly 2,000 people who died, only 1/3 of them were directly killed by the hurricane. The rest were drowned or starved to death because they could not be rescued. Even the crimes that occurred after the disaster were an important reason for the final death toll. As the most developed country in the world with the most perfect system, it had become the most chaotic country in the world in the face of a disaster. A tropical cyclone with a speed of 300 kilometers per hour was something Southeast Asian countries would encounter once or twice every 2 to 3 years. However, countries in North America rarely encountered a tropical cyclone of this intensity. Right now, the rich people on the West Coast had all gone to other cities to seek refuge. No, more accurately, they were not going to seek refuge. They were going on vacation. For rich people, going anywhere was the same. Stephen and Rasfa even invited Chun Zhao to go with them, but Chun Zhao clearly could not leave. However, there were still more than 10 hours before the tropical cyclone made landfall. Chun Zhao was not sure if it would continue to grow stronger. The West Coast was in the tropical zone. There was an obvious temperature difference between it and the Pacific Ocean. Tropical cyclones themselves were cyclones produced by convective temperature differences. The larger the temperature difference, the stronger the cyclone. According to past experience, every tropical cyclone that made landfall on the West Coast would continue to grow stronger before it made landfall. If it continued to grow stronger, it might become the strongest hurricane in the new century. Everyone was enjoying themselves at the dinner table. However, a piece of news that was broadcasted on the TV cast a shadow over everyone's mood. According to NASA's research, tropical cyclone, which was not a real tropical storm, it was an El Niño phenomenon. The Weather Bureau also issued a red alert at the same time. At the same time, there was a list of all the major cities on the West Coast. They were all red alerts. Los Angeles was in the area with the strongest winds and was about to face the center of the storm. The center of a tropical storm was not as peaceful as in novels. In fact, the closer one was to the center, the stronger the wind. Currently, NASA and the Weather Bureau had announced that the wind at the center of the storm had reached 335 kilometers per hour. It was still getting stronger. No one knew how strong the wind would be when it made landfall. El Nino, which is derived from Spanish. It originally meant holy infant. At the beginning of the 19th century, fishermen in Spanish-speaking countries such as Ecuador and Peru in South America discovered that every few years, from October to March of the following year, a warm current would move southward along the coast, raising the temperature of the surface sea significantly. The Peruvian cold current was originally prevalent on the east coast of the Pacific Ocean in South America. The fish that moved with the cold current made the Peruvian fishery one of the 4 largest in the world. However, when this warm current appeared, the fish that liked cold water would die in large numbers, causing the fishermen to suffer a disaster. Because this phenomenon was usually at its peak around Christmas, the helpless fishermen who suffered from natural disasters called it the Son of God, the Holy Infant. El Nino generally occurs once every 4 years, causing immeasurable damage to the world. However, it was uncertain and impossible to calculate. 4 years was just a calculation based on past experience. In reality, this was not the case. For example, the devastating flood in China in 1998. No one could forget that disaster. That night, the dark clouds over Los Angeles disappeared. It was rare to see the bright stars in the sky. However, everyone knew that this was not a good sign. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Mobile version website. Chapter 1410. That night, Chun Zhao didn't sleep. Instead, he sat on the balcony. During the first half of the night, there were no clouds in the sky, and the stars shone brightly. But in the latter half of the night, the starry sky was once again covered by dark clouds. The wind was blowing. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Chun, suddenly, he heard Fei Lai's scream in the bedroom. He immediately stood up and returned to the bedroom. Fei Lai, I'm here. Fei Lai touched her lower body. It was wet. Chun, my stomach hurts. Fei Lai said. Chun Zhao immediately turned on the lights and saw that Fei Lai's face was pale. Chun Zhao couldn't help but feel nervous. Was she going to give birth? What should he do? What should he do now? He couldn't be nervous now, at least not in front of Fei Lai. First, he had to confirm if Fei Lai's membranes were broken. The bed was already wet. Yes, the membranes were broken, and the amniotic fluid was coming out. Fei Lai, I'll call 4 over immediately. Chun Zhao immediately ran to 4's room and called, 4, wake up. Fei Lai's in labor. Bang, bang, bang. Chun Zhao's voice was not soft at all, for wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone in the villa, including the pets, heard it as well. 4 ran out of the room in her pajamas and followed Chun Zhao into the bedroom. 4 immediately went up to check on Fei Lai. The membrane isn't completely ruptured, 4 said. I know. Chun Zhao nodded. Send Fei Lai down first. Chun Zhao tried his best to carry Fei Lai. Just then, a small figure crept into the room. Daddy, is Mommy going to give little Jerlin a little sister? All right, I don't have to worry about little Jerlin asking me where I came from anymore. Chun Zhao chuckled. Yeah, little Jerlin has to be good today. Little Jerlin has always been obedient. Little Jerlin pouted and said unhappily. Through the elevator, Chun Zhao carried Fei Lai to the surgery room. At this time, Salah also got up and rushed to the operating room. Jerlin also came down. Chun Zhao looked at her and scratched his head. Should he kick little Jerlin out? Little Jerlin wasn't even 10 months old yet. Wouldn't it be bad to let her see such a bloody scene? Would it cast a shadow on her future? But just then, Chun Zhao suddenly felt an evil spirit appear in his villa. It was still early in the morning. How could an evil spirit appear at this time? Moreover, it was within the boundaries of his villa. But soon, the evil spirit was destroyed. It was Blackie. 4, Shara, I'll leave this to you too, Chun Zhao said with a serious expression. 4 stared at Chun Zhao with widened eyes. Chun Zhao gave 4 a look. All right, go. 4 then looked at Jerlin. What about Jerlin? Let her stay here, Chun Zhao said. Abitos, come down. Abitos moved his huge body and climbed downstairs. Although Shara had stayed here for a night, it was her first time seeing Abitos. Startled, he looked at Abitos in shock. Abitos, stay here, Chun Zhao ordered. Eat anything that comes in. Yes, Ada. Abitos crawled to a corner on his own and curled up, ignoring Shara's surprised look. For, on the other hand, was much calmer. She had been here too many times and had seen abitos before. She had even witnessed abitos' growth with her own eyes. She had seen abitos grow from a small lizard into a giant. Also, I have to seal the entrance to prevent the lake water from pouring in and flooding this place. Okay, Fer nodded. Then Chun Zhao turned and walked out of the basement. For what's that? It doesn't eat humans, right? Don't worry, Fer said calmly. I watched abitos grow up. He's very obedient. It's just a mutated Komodo dragon. In fact, abitos ate humans. Last March, when Fei Lai and Chun Zhao had gone to Sacramento, they had encountered bandits on the way. Abitos had bitten off a bandit's leg and swallowed it. Of course, Fer wouldn't tell Shara about this in case she panicked. Chun Zhao sealed the basement entrance. By then, Knots and Dalmore had woken up too. After washing up, they saw Chun Zhao sitting in the living room. But they didn't see Blackie sitting across from him. Chun Zhao looked back at the two and said, "There's breakfast in the kitchen." There was a whooshing sound outside the window. It was the sound of the forest being blown by the strong wind. Rain slapped against the glass window, making pitter-patter sounds. The wind outside was already very strong. The wind here had been blocked by the surrounding trees, so it was at least halved. If there weren't any trees around, it would be hurricane-level wind. Chun Zhao's pets had all hidden in the forest. They didn't have to worry about being blown away in the forest. Chun Zhao was sitting in the living room, but his small world's senses covered the basement, observing Fei Lai's situation. Fei Lai's membranes hadn't completely ruptured. The cervix was still expanding naturally. This was a normal physiological reaction of natural labor. Mr. Chun, Mr. Chun, Dahlia called out twice, and Chun Zhao stood up suddenly. Huh? You called me? Chun Zhao was already overly nervous. Is Miss Fei Lai in labor? Yes. Chun Zhao nodded. Later, no matter what happens, don't go outside. As long as the mansion is still here, don't run around. If the mansion is destroyed, take the elevator to the second floor to hide. It's still early, right? No, it's late. Chun Zhao shook his head. Suddenly, Dalmore felt that Chun Zhao's aura had changed. It had turned into a red, dangerous aura. Navots also felt Chun Zhao's dangerous aura. Not just Chun Zhao, but they also felt a dark red, dangerous aura in front of him. Mr. Chun, is there something in front of you? Don't worry, Chun Zhao said calmly. It's harmless and will protect you. Chun Zhao and Blackie's strategy was that Chun Zhao would be in charge of the outside and Blackie would be in charge of the inside. Chun Zhao was responsible for stopping the main force of the evil spirits, but he wasn't confident that he could completely stop the fish that slipped through the net. Now is the time for Blackie to act. Don't say that Blackie was wasting his talents. This was the best arrangement. What Chun Zhao wanted was absolute certainty. He would arrange whatever was the safest. Suddenly, Navot's shingles felt a strong palpitation. Then, Navot's legs turned to jelly. She saw a huge black shadow rushing towards them in the air outside the window. Ghost ship. It was a ghost ship. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Nine Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1411. Nawat's Hingis and Dailymore nearly pulled their hair out. So unlucky? A specter ship was actually blown here. Moreover, it was heading straight for the villa. Was there anything more unlucky than this? Chun Zhao looked at the ghost ship and walked out of the door. The moment he opened the door, the wind howled into the living room. Knots and Delamore couldn't stand steadily. Mr. Chun, where are you going? Navot Singh exclaimed. Didn't this guy see the specter ship rushing towards him? Knots rushed to the window and looked at Chun Zhao's figure outside. The bow of the ghost ship was facing them. They couldn't see the length of the ship, but the height of the pole was at least 60 meters. This was an incredible ship, and on the wooden frame of the ship was a statue of the goddess Athena. The ship was in ruins, but the flag on it was very clear. It was a pirate flag with a black background. A naked woman knelt on the ground, and a long sword pierced through the woman's chest. Virgo, Navot Singh exclaimed. Although the rain hit the glass window, making it hard to see clearly, Navot still recognized the origin of the specter ship. one of the top 10 ghost ships, Virgo. Not every Spectre ship could be recognized. Many Spectre ships were unknown before they fell silent. But any ghost ship with a name would definitely be famous on the sea, both in the past and present. As for the 10 great Spectre ships, they had a terrifying reputation. Chun Zhao raised his right arm. This was just the beginning. He didn't want to waste too much time. White light. The ghost ship was instantly enveloped by the white light. Then, not even scraps were left. Everything turned to dust. Naut's face was filled with disbelief. What had just happened? What was that white light? She couldn't understand what had happened in that instant. Chun Zhao's small world sent to see if there were any survivors. There weren't any. Only then did Chun Zhao return to the living room. Now, Navots looked at Chun Zhao in a different way. Virgo. Destroyed? The famous Virgo was destroyed just like that? That was the Spectre ship. It was the famous Virgo. Furthermore, there was no thrilling battle. In an instant, everything was over. Mr. Chun, that was ghost ship, right? How did you do it? Chun Zhao glanced at Navots. I think you got something wrong. We're not facing the second night, but the third. The awakened one is my unborn daughter. So, while it's still early and the wind hasn't reached its peak, you still have a chance to escape. Naut Singh and Delamore were both shocked. The third night? Were they about to face the third night? Dahlia was still all right, because she didn't have an accurate idea of how terrifying the third night was. But Navots Hingis knew. She knew how terrible it was. That would be a disaster. Mr. Chun, are you kidding me? Now that my family is in the basement, do you think I would joke around? Navots was trembling slightly. Mr. Chun, do you not understand the meaning of the third night? I know, Chun Zhao said calmly. But now my family is facing the third night. Navots Hingis looked at Dahlia. Dahlia, you go first. I'll stay. Mr. Chun, I'll stay here for now, but if I think it's necessary, I'll leave too. I'll stay too, Dahlia said. Thank you. Chun Zhao nodded. I'll still say the same thing. If you stay in a mansion, you won't be harmed. Navots didn't have much confidence in Chun Zhao's promise. After all, this was the third night. Plus, it didn't seem like a normal third night. Chun Zhao sat back down on the sofa and continued observing the basement. Fei Lai's labor seemed to be slower than a normal natural labor. Thankfully, Fei Lai was healthy and strong, so as long as there were no major problems, it was acceptable even if it took longer. Chun Zhao didn't care if it was natural, cesarean, or painless labor. As long as Fei Lai was safe, as long as the child was safe, nothing else mattered. After getting rid of the Spectre ship, the attacks seemed to stop. In the next hour or so, there was still no movement. Nevertheless, Chun Zhao remained tense. At 9:40 in the morning, the TV broadcasted an emergency announcement again. The wind at the center of the storm reached 368 kilometers per hour. This was a terrifying number. It might even be the most powerful tropical storm in 100 years. 20-meter-tall waves rose along the coastline. The coastline was completely locked down. At the same time, the weather station also suggested that residents living in the suburbs should hide in their basements and prepare for waterproofing. Every TV station was broadcasting the news of the tropical storm. Some anchors even claimed that this would be the toughest test in American history. Just then, Chun Zhao stood up again. Navots Hingis and Dahlia both looked at him uneasily. It wasn't just because of the third night, but also because of this unprecedented storm. Of course, so far, they had not linked the two events together. But Chun Zhao felt that they were the same event. Mr. Chun, are there more enemies? Yes. Chun Zhao nodded. Navots Hingis was a bit surprised. Chun Zhao's senses were stronger than she'd imagined. Of course, Chun Zhao's maximum range was 30 meters, which was the range of his mini-world. On the other hand, if Navots used perception offense, it might not be as clear as Chun Zhao within 30 meters, but it would be more accurate beyond 30 meters. Navots used his super area of effect perception. In an instant, an image flashed in his mind. Hundreds of evil spirits appeared within a few hundred meters in front of him. How is this possible? It wasn't even 10 in the morning. How could there be a large-scale attack of evil spirits? She thought that the ghost ship had been blown over by the wind. They were just unlucky. But now, these hundreds of evil spirits couldn't have been blown over by the wind too, right? This was too unusual. It didn't fit the pattern of the Night of Awakening. Also, why were there so many evil spirits at this time? Could Chen Zhao deal with them alone? Should she go out and help? Dahlia, stay here. I'll go out for a bit. Navots finally decided to go out and see if she could help. Please remember this book's domain name, Nine Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1412. However, Navots regretted it as soon as she stepped out. She'd underestimated the wind outside. When she reached the front yard, she almost lost her balance. Fortunately, there was a pillar supporting the awning, and Navots grabbed onto it. Of course, the canopy had already been blown away. Only the pillar was left standing there. But even with the support of the pillar, Navots still felt it was difficult. She couldn't even help Chen Zhao fight. However, Chen Zhao seemed to not feel the wind at all. He just stood there. The hundreds and thousands of evil spirits flew over from above Mirror Lake. It was truly terrifying. They were so dense that they were like an army charging over. They gave off a chaotic, disorderly, and manic aura. This aura gathered above their heads and accompanied them as they advanced. At the same time, it made them stronger and scarier. In Navots' eyes, these hundreds of evil spirits were the scariest part of the third night. But reality wasn't like that. It was daytime now, and this was only the prelude. Judging from the trend of getting weaker and stronger, Navots didn't know what kind of attack she would face later on. The beginning was already so scary. What kind of attack would there be later? Could the few of them really defend against such an attack? Why did you come out? Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Navots. I came out to help you. Go in. I don't need your help here. Be careful. Navots Singh suddenly shouted. An evil spirit waved its arms and grabbed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his arm and grabbed the evil spirit. The evil spirit struggled in his hand, but it couldn't break free. Eye of the lightning. Attract lightning. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning descended from the sky and landed on Chen Zhao's right arm. Navots Singles was shocked to the core. Looking at Chen Zhao's unmoving body, she wondered if the lightning was attracted by Chen Zhao. He said he knew some elemental magic. Was it thunder magic? And this was called only a little. The evil spirit in Chen Zhao's right hand had already turned to ashes under the lightning. Chen Zhao's right arm also gathered a large amount of lightning. The mouth of Gluttony spat out an electric arc. The terrifying electric arc broke through the wind and rain and swept across the sky above Mirror Lake, remaining in the air for more than 10 seconds. In less than 10 seconds, hundreds of evil spirits had been wiped out. In the storm, Chen Zhao was invincible. The harsher the weather, the more lightning Chen Zhao could absorb. Of course, he could convert more of it into magic power. Navots' face was filled with shock. Was this what Chen Zhao had said in the past? Knowing some elemental magic? This was a powerful magic that she had never heard of or seen before. He said he majored in strengthening? It was obviously a lie. Looks like it'll stop for a while. Chen Zhao glanced at the storm and turned to bring Navots Singh into the house. Mr. Chen, it seems like there's no point for me to stay here. Put on this headset, Chen Zhao said. If you notice any stragglers while I'm busy fighting, inform me immediately. Chen Zhao had never planned on letting Navots and Deli Moore help him fight. They only stayed here to ensure that nothing would go wrong. In less than 10 minutes, Navots said, there's another wave of evil spirits attacking. Some of them are very, very scary. Navots looked at Chen Zhao worriedly. Could Chen Zhao really deal with such frequent attacks by himself? Chen Zhao walked out again. A few minutes later, he returned to the house. Mr. Chen, it's done? No, those evil spirits are still here, Navots asked in confusion, looking up at Chen Zhao, who'd just entered the room. I'll use my clone to deal with them, Chen Zhao said. Navots realized that the evil spirits were indeed disappearing quickly. Clone magic? Chen Zhao had said last time that he indeed knew clone magic. But Navots hadn't thought much of it at the time. After all, most clone magic was passed down through bloodlines. At least, Navots hadn't seen any powerful clone spiritualists. However, Chun Zhao's clone was actually able to fight against so many evil spirits, including some powerful ones. Those powerful evil spirits couldn't be compared to regular evil spirits or spiritual bodies. Before they arrived, they'd been devouring each other. Some would become even more violent and chaotic. Their strength was 10 to dozens of times stronger than ordinary evil spirits. Navots could only sense the existence of the evil spirits and the strength of their auras. But when she stood before the floor-to-ceiling window and looked outside, she could see Chun Zhao's 12 clones. Every one of them was extremely powerful. Even the evil spirit, which Navots thought was extremely powerful, could only take one strike from Chun Zhao's clone. Navots was amazed. Not only was Chun Zhao's elemental magic powerful, but his clone magic was also powerful. She saw with her own eyes that one of Chun Zhao's clones ripped apart a 10-meter-long evil spirit with its bare hands. If it were him, the biggest possibility was that he would flee in defeat. Navots thought back to 2 days ago. She'd even used the tone of a senior to teach Chun Zhao how to use magic and fight. At the thought, Navot's shingles felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. It was like a kindergarten teacher telling a Chinese Academy of Sciences doctor how to study. And the battle lasted much longer than what Navots expected. Before the first wave was destroyed, the second wave came. Chun Zhao had 12 clones, but they didn't know magic. Now, to Chun Zhao, the 12 clones' greatest use was no longer to fight separately. Instead, they combined into one. Or it could be a battle that didn't have much strength and lasted a long time. He'd let the 12 clones fight. Navots had thought that Chun Zhao's clones wouldn't be able to last long. But reality wasn't like that. Chun Zhao's clones were extremely strong and could last for a long time. In fact, as long as Chun Zhao's clones weren't destroyed or taken back, they would always exist. An evil spirit escaped, Navots said. It's coming from the right side of the villa. Suddenly, the red ball of dangerous aura in the living room disappeared. In just 3 seconds, the evil spirit disappeared too. Navots was shocked. It wasn't a dangerous aura. It was a despairing aura. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heaven's Godly Emperor mobile version. Chapter 14:13. Navots felt chills run down her spine. It was a very bad feeling. The dangerous aura that had been lingering in the living room returned, but when it returned, it had turned black. Black was a color she had never seen before. Even her elders had never told her what black represented. This kind of perception spell only had 2 colors, red and green. They represented the level of danger. But what did black represent? She had never heard of it or even seen it before. Was this another spell from Chun Zhao? But what spell was it exactly? Chun Zhao didn't pay attention to Navots and Delamore's expressions. He was more concerned about Fei Lai's situation in the basement. Fei Lai had already been in labor for almost 5 hours, and it was still going on. Chun Zhao completely ignored the battle outside the house. If there was a battle above, the basement was also a battlefield. Mom, go! Mom, go! Zherlin cheered Fei Lai on. This was probably the first time Chun Zhao couldn't participate in a battle himself. Fei Lai had to face it alone. Chun Zhao kept looking at the time. Time passed by minute. When the hand of the clock pointed at 12. Wah! Wah! With a cry, Chun Zhao's second child was finally born. Just then, the storm seemed to grow stronger. Chun Zhao could hear creaking sounds coming from the mansion. This was the prelude to the structure of the mansion disintegrating. Mr. Chun, the house seems to be destroyed. Delamore's expression suddenly turned ugly. If she and Navot Singh were exposed to the storm, they would die for sure. The number of evil spirits has increased. Navots turned to look at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao finally turned his attention back to the battlefield. Navots and Delamore realized that a black and red liquid had appeared under their feet. Ah, what is this? Immediately, the storm started destroying the mansion. This was an irreversible process. Even Chun Zhao couldn't avoid it. If it was just a storm, Chun Zhao could still protect the mansion with the dark lava. But it wasn't just a storm now. Chun Zhao summoned Boastier and the 2 Dark Mothers. Not Singh and Delamore were startled once more. They thought it was some evil magical creature. The two of them gasped in amazement when they saw Bustil's enormous body. The moment Bustil appeared, his huge body tore down the villa. Its body was much bigger than the villa. The living room was small, and it couldn't accommodate Bustil's huge body at all. But Bustil stood in front of Navots and Delimore, shielding them from the storm. "These three are my servants," Chun Zhao said. "They will protect you." The two women sucked in a breath of cold air again. Such a powerful creature was actually his servant. Did he summon it? Nawat's Shingles realized that Chun Zhao had another powerful series of spells. Even if Bustil didn't do anything and just stood there, wouldn't it be scary enough? This huge body almost completely blocked the storm. The two darkness matriarchs followed them calmly. This man was unbelievably powerful. Chun Zhao stood at the front and looked at the battlefield. The 12 clones immediately retreated to Chun Zhao's side. Dark lava enveloped them. All in one, the 12 clones and Chun Zhao merged into one. Chun Zhao hadn't used all-in-one for a month, but now he was full of fighting spirit. This battle wasn't for benefits or for others. Everything about him was beneath it. Narvak Singh and Delimore were confused. Why did Chun Zhao remove the clone spell? Weren't the 12 clones very effective at blocking most of the evil spirits? Was it because it was too draining? That made sense. The clones had been fighting intensely for a few hours already. It must have used a lot of magic power. However, such a large amount of magic power was consumed. Chun Zhao summoned the 3 magical creatures to protect the 2 women. Would he still have the strength to continue fighting? Nawat Singh and Delimore were both worried. Nawat's already realized that this wasn't an ordinary third night. She'd never heard of a third night starting on the third morning. Chun Zhao wasn't surprised. Including this time, Chun Zhao had experienced the third night 3 times. All 3 times were different. The first time, Blackie had finished it all by himself. The second time was different. That night, the Evil Spirit Society had attacked Norma. Plus, the Evil Spirit Society had attached themselves to the bodies of many gang members. It was much stronger than the first time. Today's intensity was also much stronger than the previous 2 times. Perhaps everyone's third night would be different. Nawat's Shingles saw the sky full of evil spirits coming for them. It's over. The number of evil spirits was like a tidal wave, following the momentum of a storm. Could Chun Zhao stop so many evil spirits? Suddenly, there was a splash in Mirror Lake. A huge mouth opened and sucked in hundreds of evil spirits. Not Singh and Delimore's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. What was that? What had just come out of the water? Chun Zhao waved his arms and summoned 1,000 swords. The next moment, 1,000 stone swords appeared around Chun Zhao. This scene shocked Nawat Singh and Delimore once again. They'd never seen such a shocking scene before. 1,000 stone swords broke through the air with cyclones. Was this the battle of the third night? This scene was like a myth. Nawat was speechless. How many evil spirits and dead souls had been blown over by this storm? In Nawat's and Delimore's eyes, each of Chun Zhao's spells was so shocking. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared above everyone's heads. Nawat's suddenly felt a threat from above. Ghost ship. It was a ghost ship that was falling head first. Mr. Chun, above, above. But it was too late. The ghost ship had come too suddenly and fallen too fast. Chun Zhao couldn't dodge at all. Nawat's and Delimore both cried out in shock. They saw the evil spirit crew on the ghost ship bearing their fangs and claws. They were as crazy and unrestrained as they were when they were alive. They waved their rotten swords and let out evil and crazy howls. Chun Zhao lifted his head. He hadn't planned on running. There was no point in running away in this war. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heaven's Godly Emperor mobile version. Chapter 1414. There was only one solution. Kill all the attackers. Chun Zhao raised his fist and smashed it against the bow of the ghost ship that was falling down. Nawat's Shingles and Delimore's eyes widened. What did they just see? They saw a human, a body of flesh and blood, shattering a ghost ship with a single punch. The hundreds of evil souls on the Spectre ship were also blown to smithereens. They'd been crazy pirates when they were alive. Now that they were dead, they were even crazier and scarier. But Chen Zhao only punched them. Chen Zhao retracted his fist, as if it was just a small thing. They never knew that ghost ships were so easy to deal with. In the past, if they discovered a rampaging ghost ship, they would usually need to gather and fight. No matter what the result was, they would need to pay a huge price. But to Chen Zhao, ghost ships seemed to be just a matter of one punch. Just then, a wave surged over from the end of Mirror Lake. A red wave. As the storm swept over, the red wave surged more and more violently. Tide of death. Knot shouted. Mr. Chen, that's the tide of death. Be careful. Chen Zhao looked at the red wave. There were countless howling souls in the wave. They were fighting to be the first to rush toward the mansion. They'd already formed a wave more than 10 meters tall. There wasn't just one wave either. There were two more tides of death behind it. Amon attacked again. He leaped from his side and flapped his huge wings, increasing his height. He flapped again and went higher. When he was 100 meters in the air, Amon suddenly fell head first. With an unparalleled impact, he plummeted to the ground. Not Singh and Delamore had never seen such a shocking battle before. This battlefield had long since surpassed their understanding. Boom! The moment Amon landed, the force was also dispersed. Amon already weighed 1,000 tons. Falling from a height of 100 meters, one could imagine how powerful the impact would be. Even the three tides of death were wiped out by the impact caused by Amon. This battle also toppled their worldview. It turned out that spiritualists could really be like those in myths and legends. An absurd thought even appeared in Not's mind. Who was stronger between this man and the five Pillar Kings in the Romani mythology? Nawats recalled the mirror image of weakness she had used on Chen Zhao last time. At the time, she was already shocked. She thought that was Chen Zhao's strongest power. At the time, she naively thought that she'd made a mistake and used her mirror image ability to copy Chen Zhao's strongest power. But now, it seemed that he was too naive. Sing, I sense a huge presence approaching from the front. Did I sense it wrongly? Look. Dalamore's words interrupted Nawats Singh's thoughts. Nawats quickly activated his range perception. Indeed, there was a terrifying presence approaching from the front. Mr. Chun, be careful. There's a huge, evil aura ahead. In fact, Chen Zhao had already sensed it. Not only did he sense it, but he also saw it. It was a fleet of modern warships. That's right, it was a modern warship fleet. The fleet consisted of more than 10 warships of various models and functions, and they were flying in the air. What a ridiculous thing. A fleet was flying in the sky. This wasn't science fiction. It was a super magical plot. They were all death fleets formed by warships that had sunk in the Pacific Ocean. They didn't wander or gather. Fortunately, it didn't wander. Otherwise, the entire Pacific Ocean would become a forbidden zone. But this time, they gathered because of the power of the third night. In the wind and rain, the enormous figure of the flagship could be vaguely seen. They came with death. They were a true disaster. Boom! In the wind and rain, a ball of green fire flashed. Boom! A ball of intense green death flames exploded in front of Chen Zhao. Nawats Singh exclaimed. She and Dalymore had thought that Chen Zhao would be strong enough to face all this. But who would have thought that the arrival of the Death Fleet would turn the situation around? The explosion was a combination of death flames and modern weapons. Flesh and blood couldn't resist it at all. Any creature that was hit head-on by this weapon would only end up as ashes and smoke. Nawats Singh and Dalymore both thought that Chen Zhao couldn't possibly escape. However, the green flames dissipated faster than expected. Chen Zhao stood where he was, unharmed. But the Death Fleet's attack didn't stop there. More than a dozen ghost warships fired hundreds of cannons at the same time. These ghost warships spanned from the 20s to the 60s and 70s. The dark magma immediately formed a black screen, blocking the Death Fleet's first salvo. They couldn't let the ghost warships continue attacking. Even if Chen Zhao could handle it, Not Singh and Delamore couldn't. Chen Zhao finally moved. This was the first time he'd move his feet. Behind him, Nawats Singh and Dalymore saw Chen Zhao shoot out like an arrow. Reverse storm shot toward the Death Fleet. Because of the storm, the visibility was too low. They couldn't see the battle between Chun Zhao and the Death Fleet clearly. But soon, the flagship at the front suddenly fell. Then Amon swam over. He opened his mouth and absorbed the falling ghost warships. It didn't take long for the Spectre battleship to disappear. They weren't real. They were essentially the same as the ancient ghost ships. Soon, the second ghost warship fell, then the third and the fourth. In Chun Zhao's eyes, the Death Fleet's biggest threat was their long-range attacks. Once Chun Zhao got close, the threat was no different from a regular ghost ship. In a short 10 minutes, more than a dozen ghost warships all fell. Amon had already devoured the death aura of the entire Death Fleet. Right now, Amon had turned into a 100-meter-tall beast. Chapter 14:15. Amon opened his mouth, and a green beam of light shot out. The green beam was similar to the Death Fleet's cannons. But Amon shot further, and his breath was heavier. The green beam shot more than 10 kilometers away and then exploded into a ball of green flames. He seemed to have hit something. Knots and Delamore could only vaguely see the faint green light, but they didn't know what it was. But soon they saw what it was. It was a baby, at least from the overall appearance. It was indeed a baby, but the baby was a bit too big. A 40-meter-long baby was obviously not born to a human. Its skin wasn't tender and fragile like a newborn's. Instead, it was dark and cracked. Chun Zhao descended from the sky and pressed down on the giant baby's head. In an instant, the giant baby's body collapsed, and countless evil spirits escaped from the giant baby's body. The giant baby was formed by countless evil spirits. Lightning. Chun Zhao drew down a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of evil spirits were turned into ashes by the lightning. Chun Zhao suddenly had an idea. If he could summon the devil army from the association, then he could use Thunderstorm at Mirror Lake. That way, he wouldn't have to keep running around to fix his mistakes. Chun Zhao took out his phone, but there was no signal. There was no signal. Chun Zhao was so angry that he almost smashed his phone. After this was over, he had to change to another operator. Damn it. He had no choice. For his family, he had to continue fighting. Although this battle had already exceeded the normal third night, it was still not enough. But the strongest ones were only at the Death Fleet's level. They couldn't create something that went against nature. But to Daily Moore and Nawat Singh, this battle was thrilling. It wasn't something they could interfere with at all. Chun Zhao worked harder and harder. Every evil spirit was torn apart by him. I haven't even hugged my baby since it was born. My whole family is still in the basement. My house was torn down, although I did it on my own initiative. You Astra's souls, you're still here to cause trouble. The more depressed Chun Zhao was, the harder he attacked. Chun Zhao wasn't happy. Everyone in the basement wasn't happy either. Fei Lai, is Chun okay? For hugged the baby. When the baby was born, it cried for a while. Then, Fei Lai fed it some milk and it fell asleep. Fei Lai was wrapped in a blanket. She sat next to Abidos with Fal and Shala. Abidos wasn't really a cold-blooded animal. His body was very warm, just enough to provide heat for the three of them. After Shayla overcame her initial fear, she was no longer afraid. Little Jerlin, on the other hand, kept poking her head over to look at the wrapped baby. Mommy, the baby is so small. Mommy, can I hold the baby? Fei Lai smiled bitterly. Little Jerlin couldn't be carried now. Boom, boom. A violent tremor came from the ceiling. However, the ceiling was still quite sturdy. There were only tremors, but no signs of collapse, and no water seepage. There won't be a world war outside, right? Shayla asked. It's okay. Chin's up there. How long do we have to hide here? I don't know. Chin will inform us once the problem is solved. Are you sure nothing will happen to Chun? Fal wasn't very sure. Of course not. Daddy's super powerful. He'll kill all the bad guys. Oh, Fei Lai, you haven't named the baby yet, Fal said. How about we give this pretty girl a name now? Let's wait for Chun, Fei Lai said. Don't wait for him. You gave birth to the baby, so you have the right to name it. I still want to discuss with Chun before deciding. Mommy, isn't the baby a name? Jerlin asked, tilting her head. Fei Lai, Fal, and Shayla were all speechless. I suddenly realized a very, very serious problem. Fal suddenly became serious. What problem? Chun has considered all the problems except one. Four's expression darkened. Tell me, what problem? Toilet. How to solve it? You need to go to the toilet? Fal nodded gravely. Big or small? Big, Fal said, covering her eyes. Phalai and Shayla's expressions also became unnatural. If he did it in an enclosed space, it would turn the enclosed space into hell. Phalai thought for a long time. Help me up. What are you going to do? Do you want to pee too? Phalai rolled her eyes. She had only eaten a little in the past 2 days. Most of the rest was nutrient fluid. Phalai went to the entrance of a second basement and turned on the switch. Then, she looked down. There was no light source on the second basement, only a small one at the entrance. Phalai looked down. It seemed that the three-headed dog was not down there. Go down and solve it. Is there something down there? Fal saw Phalai's action. Nothing. Even if there is, you don't have to be afraid, Phalai said calmly. Speak clearly. What's down there? You saw it too. There's nothing down there. Although Phalai had made a solemn promise, for was still a little worried. However, she could not afford to waste any more time. She handed the baby to Phalai and jogged down the stairs. The second basement was very dark. There was also a huge water trough that led to Mirror Lake. Because of the storm outside, large amounts of water kept pouring into the trough. Thankfully, the design of the water trough was special. The lake water would not completely pour in, for had a feeling that the second floor of the basement gave her a terrifying feeling. After the mansion was built, she knew that it was a second basement. Phalai had said that it was used for storage, but there was nothing here now. Also, what was the opening in the water trough for? She had no idea what Phalai and Chun Zhao were thinking. A few minutes later, Fal hurriedly finished and ran back up. Phalai sealed the passageway. Her actions made Four suspicious again. The first basement had originally been a lounge. Chapter 14:16. Midnight. The wind began to weaken, and the evil spirit's attack frequency also decreased. Occasionally, 1 or 2 troublesome evil spirits would run out, but they were no longer a threat. It started in the morning and continued until now. Chun Zhao had never wanted to hug his second child as much as he did now. Gradually, the wind stopped, but the rain continued. Mr. Chun, it's 1 in the morning. Knots and Daryl Moore had been standing for a while. They couldn't stand anymore and had been sitting on the ground since nightfall. Of course, they still found a few planks to cushion their butts. Chun Zhao could finally relax. But he didn't completely relax. After all, his second daughter's third night had started very strangely. Who knew if it would end normally? Chun Zhao rubbed his hands. He could finally open the entrance to the basement. He opened the entrance to the basement. At the moment, Shara was asleep on the sofa. Phalai and Four were each hugging a child, but Phalai seemed to sense something. She opened her eyes and saw Chun Zhao. Chun. Yes. Chun Zhao walked up and looked at the baby in Phalai's arms. He hugged her gently. Thank you. You too, Phalai replied. At the same time, she handed the baby to Chun Zhao. Do you want a hug? Yes. Chun Zhao gently picked up his second child. The little girl was slightly red. She put her little finger in her mouth and sucked. Chun Zhao didn't dare to use any strength at all. It was like the first time he'd hugged Jerlin. He was afraid that he would hurt the magical little life in his arms if he used any strength. But Chun Zhao also wanted to toss the little girl in his arms. This feeling was really special. Phalai, what should we call our child? Just then, Blackie floated over and looked at the baby in Chun Zhao's arms. Chun Zhao, I want to be your godfather. Is that okay? Chun Zhao nodded. Blackie had never made a request. This was the only time he'd made one. Chun Zhao wouldn't reject it. He couldn't. Blackie couldn't help but reach out his black and dry palm. His finger gently touched the baby's face. But very soon, Blackie retracted it in fear. It was as if he was afraid of defiling a baby. Dad! Just then, Jerlin felt Chun Zhao. She immediately opened her eyes and called out loudly. Little Jerlin's cry woke Shala and Four up. Chun, why did you come down? Is it over? Yes, Chun Zhao said. The wind has stopped, but it's still raining. Miss Navots, Miss Daly Moore, please rest in the RV. Chun Zhao sent the two girls to the underground garage. Thankfully, the garage was underground. Otherwise, their losses would be huge. Putting aside the two trucks that were usually used to import goods, the value of the two Porsches and the RV was as high as $7 million. Even if the house was destroyed, it was less than $2 million. As long as his family was safe, this loss was worth it. Chun Zhao carried little Jerlin while Fei Lai carried her sister. Little Jerlin, aren't you tired? I'm not sleepy. Jerlin blinked and looked at Chun Zhao. Dad, Mom, do you want to rest? Jerlin has to look after the baby for Mom and Dad. Dad, Mom, can you let the baby sleep with Jerlin in the future? Jerlin will definitely take good care of the baby. Chun Zhao smiled. It was impossible to sleep together. Chun Zhao planned for his second daughter to sleep separately after the first few days, just like how Jerlin had done before. Jerlin was actually very tired too. She had been playing with the baby the entire day and hadn't been idle at all. She was even more attentive to the baby than Fei Lai. Soon, she fell asleep on the sofa. The next day, Chun Zhao and Fei Lai were woken up by Jerlin. Jerlin had woken up at some point and was mumbling in front of the cradle. When Shala and Four walked out of the basement and saw the flattened mansion, they were both shocked. Luckily, they had hidden in the basement yesterday. Otherwise, it was hard to imagine what would have happened. Then Four and Shala left. Navots and Daily Moore prepared to leave too. Mr. Chun, I have an empty mansion. Do you want to borrow it? Daily Moore only wanted to build a good relationship with Chun Zhao now. Yesterday, Chun Zhao had shocked her and Navots too much. Chun Zhao tactfully rejected Daily Moore's suggestion. Chun Zhao had his own plans. The beach mansion would be completed in about a month. Before that, his family planned to stay at the association for a while. After the two left, Chun Zhao and Fei Lai also started packing, preparing to go to the association. Of course, their house had been blown away. What could they pack? They just had to gather all the pets and go to the headquarters together. Just then, Chun Zhao's phone rang. It was Denver. The brewery seemed to have suffered some damage due to the storm and had to stop production for a few days. Denver was currently in Denver preparing for the beer festival, so he couldn't come back for now. He could only leave it to the higher-ups in the factory. Chun Zhao understood. With the strength of the storm yesterday, they were lucky that the factory hadn't been blown away. Of course, this was also related to Felwood's dedication. After all, this was a project Chun Zhao had commissioned. Felwood was practically supervising the entire process. Any small quality problem would make him angry. Chun Zhao didn't call the association. He didn't know if the association had been greatly affected by the storm. Driving the RV to the association, Chun Zhao saw the collapsed outer walls. The iron gate had also been blown down. The headquarters wasn't damaged, though. Chun Zhao was very satisfied. Seeing Chun Zhao's car, the people from the association immediately ran out. But when they saw the swaddle in Fei Lai's arms and her deflated stomach, everyone cried out in shock. Wow, Miss Fei Lai, who's the baby in your arms? Miss Fei Lai, you gave birth already? When did it happen? The chatter of the people nearby immediately woke up the sleeping baby. Wah! As soon as the baby woke up, he started crying. Shocked, everyone looked at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao and little Jerlin, who was in Chun Zhao's arms, were looking at the crowd with murderous intent. Okay, go in. Chun Zhao waved his hand. Just then, Gaia walked out too. Chun, Fei Lai. Gaia also came for the baby. Congratulations. Thank you. Have you named it? Chapter 14-17. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai glanced at each other. Not yet. Do you have an alternative name? There are a few that we can't decide on. Then everyone huddled together and started talking, giving Chun Zhao and Fei Lai suggestions. Even Jerlin was no exception. Dad, Mom, what do you think of Little Angel? Angel is too common. Actually, both Chun Zhao and Fei Lai had thought of this name. Most parents had thought of this name. Little Jerlin still thinks Little Angel is very good. Little Jerlin said unhappily with puffed cheeks. Kevin, what about Kevin? Gaia asked. Kevin represented wisdom and beauty. No, Little Angel is better, Jerlin said. Nana, what about Nana? West asked. Nana was the name of the Babylonian goddess of light. Angeli, I think the president's daughter should be named like this, the heroic spear-wielding empress. Then we should call her Juno, Klaus said. It means diva. Clova is better. Harold said. I still think Little Angel is better. Everyone felt that their name for the baby was better than the others. Then why don't we write everyone's name on the sign and let them choose? Phalai asked hesitantly. Then why don't we write our name on the sign and let them choose? Everyone's names were not bad. This made it even harder for the two to choose. Chun Zhao also agreed, but the baby couldn't even crawl. How could she choose a name? More importantly, she was still sleeping. After thinking for a while, they decided to use darts to shoot at the target. Whatever they hit would count. Chun Zhao grabbed the baby's arm and threw the dart at the wheel. Whoosh! The dart hit the wheel. Everyone looked at it immediately. Larissa, meaning fortress. Who gave this name? Chun Zhao asked curiously. It was a nice name with a good meaning. Okay, it's decided. Larissa it is. Dad, can't we change it? Isn't Little Angela good? Zherlin looked at Chun Zhao with tears in her eyes. Other than this, I'll agree to anything you want. Really? Yes, really. Okay. I want to share a room with little Larissa. Chun Zhao's mind raced. Zherlin still hadn't given up on the idea. I feel a little dizzy. I need a rest for a while. Daddy, don't go. You haven't promised little Zherlin. Seeing that Chun Zhao had escaped, Zherlin immediately turned to look at Phalai. Well, Mr. Fellwood, are you all right? God bless me, I'm fine. Has the project by the sea been affected? Many of the trees we planted were blown down, but the building itself is undamaged. Some of the temporary structures were blown down too. The construction period might be delayed for a few days, Fellwood said honestly. Well, after the seaside project is completed, go to Mirror Lake and help me rebuild the villa. Mr. Chun, Mirror Lake Mansion has been destroyed? Yes, but it's not because of your quality. It's mainly because I accidentally demolished the house. Fellwood was speechless. Was there such a thing as an accident when demolishing a house? That day, Chun Zhao took some time to go to Moon Beach. Apart from the beach, Chun Zhao also named his new home Moon Villa. Moon Villa's project was 80% complete. Now, it was being renovated. At the same time, there were trees blown down by the storm. These trees had been planted not long ago. They weren't even rooted in. It was already lucky that they weren't blown away by the storm with a speed of more than 300 kilometers per hour. Moon Villa was a bit messy after the storm, but it was starting to show its grand form. The Bright Moon Villa wasn't very big, but it was built on a cliff and it was inlaid. A part of the rock layer at the top of the cliff had been dug out. This was the most difficult part of the project. This part of the rock layer could only be excavated manually. Explosives couldn't be used. Explosives would destroy the entire rock layer. The elevator shaft from the top of the cliff to the beach was also dug through with a drill. The project was very difficult. Now, the beach had been cleaned. The gravel had been cleared and thousands of tons of fine sand had been brought over. A few thousand tons of fine sand sounded like a lot, but it was barely enough to cover a dozen kilometers of coastline. Also, because of the erosion of the sea, more sand had to be added every month to maintain the quality of the beach. Because of the storm, a lot of trash had been washed ashore. Now, many workers were cleaning the trash on the beach. On the other side of Moon Beach was Sandra National Park. It was surrounded by green mountains and had a great geographical environment. Chun Zhao had considered buying this place because of its good environment. Mr. Chun, I'll replant the trees on the cliff, but I checked the weather forecast. It seems like there'll be another storm in the next month. I'm afraid that the trees will be blown down again. Fellwood Cisco had a headache. He tried his best, but some things couldn't be changed. The trees hadn't been planted for long and couldn't take root too deeply. No one could change this. It's okay, Chun Zhao said. You just have to straighten the trees. I'll think of something then. Chun Zhao had already planned to move Eugenus here. Compared to the medium-sized forest at Mirror Lake, Eugenus could be more effective here. There was a larger forest here. Although Sandra National Park didn't belong to Chun Zhao, it didn't belong to anyone either. But since it didn't belong to anyone, the area that Eugenus could control was larger. Eugenus could make the trees grow quickly in a short time. For example, the forest around Mirror Lake. Because of Eugenus' control, it could withstand the storm. Not a single tree fell. The main building of Moon Villa was like an egg. Of course, Calling it an egg would be too ugly. As the designer, Felwood Cisco felt that it was a gem. The arc-shaped structure could withstand the wind blowing from all directions. For example, the main building of Moon Villa was undamaged in the tropical storm which Mr. Felwood, Chun Zhao asked, "When can my family and I move in?" Half a month later. "Mr. Chun, you can install the butler system soon." There is no problem of excessive formaldehyde in the United States because the decoration here did not allow the use of any coatings containing formaldehyde, not even a little bit. Therefore, there was no problem of ventilation for a few months after the decoration was completed before people could move in. Chapter 14:18. After leaving Moon Beach, Chun Zhao entered the city. The wind and rain had stopped, but the streets were still a mess. The entire city was in chaos. The storm had caused great damage to the city and even the entire West Coast. Of course, there were also hundreds of lives. Even before the storm, the Weather Bureau had already sent out warnings many times. But not every family had the means to seek shelter, or perhaps their shelter facilities were too shabby. Even in the downtown area, there were buildings that had been completely destroyed. Many shops in the city were temporarily closed. According to the Weather Bureau, the storm had broken the record for the strongest tropical storm in the past century. The highest speed of the storm was 372 kilometers per hour. Unparalleled destructive power. Even if placed in the entire world, it would be terrifying. Of course, while the entire world was praying for the Americans themselves acted like nothing had happened. Apart from the people in the affected areas, the people in other states didn't care at all. For example, Denver's beer festival was held as scheduled. Dashin beer became famous throughout the United States, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was famous all over the world. Because Denver dropped a bombshell at Oktoberfest. The owner of Dashin beer and the brewer of Daydream were the same person. Apart from the African continent, there was basically no one in the other continents who didn't know about daydreaming. Even though a few people didn't admit it, most people admitted that Daydream was the world's most famous beer. Everyone flocked to Daydream, but it was priced at $999,999,999,999, and it was priceless. It wasn't that no one could fork out $1 billion, but the key was that Daydream wasn't something Winnip or Mara supermarket could sell at will. And then there's the city of Sacramento, which has been hooked up with daydreams. There are too many interests involved in daydreaming. Daydream was something that most people couldn't buy in their lifetime, but Dashin beer was different. Its market price was slightly higher than regular beer, but most people could afford it. Chun, Winnip said, "The second batch of beer from your factory has been shipped to our supermarket, the local supermarket in Los Angeles. There are dozens supermarket chains in California. Yesterday, you sold almost 750,000 cans of beer." The beer factory hasn't resumed production yet, Chun Zhao said helplessly. "Oh, Fei gave birth. Both mother and daughter are safe." "What? Production stopped? Why? Wait. What did you say? Say it again." "Fei gave birth," Chun Zhao said. "It's a daughter. 2 days ago at noon. Why did you only tell me after 2 days? Did you do it on purpose?" "Forgot," Chun Zhao said. "I think you did on purpose. I'll go to L.A. tomorrow." "No, I'll go to L.A. today," Winnip said and hung up. "Damn, that old thing Laurent is coming again?" Chun Zhao's head swelled. No, he couldn't let that old thing come. He called Kareem. "Kareem, I don't care what you, Howard, and Kane do. Get Laurent to the hospital in an hour." Kareem nodded. "Why? Did Mr. Laurent do something again?" "Winnip should come to L.A. in the afternoon. If you can send Laurent to the hospital, you can drink as much purple brew as you want when you come. There's no limit." "That's what you said. Laurent, you bastard. How many times have I told you to wear a seat belt, even if you're sitting in the back seat? Look at you now. I don't care anymore. I'm going to L. How was I supposed to know that Kareem would crash when he's such a good driver?" Lawrence's face was gloomy. He was seriously injured in the car accident today. His thigh was pinched, and he couldn't even walk now. He needed surgery. However, when he heard that Winnip was going to L, his expression became unhappy. "Why are you going to L.A.? Fei already gave birth 2 days ago." What? Fei Lai gave birth. Is it a boy or a girl? What's the name? Laurent stood up in excitement, but his agitation pulled at his wound. Ah, it's a girl, Larissa. Fei Lai and the child are both healthy, Winnip said. No, I can't lie here. I have to get out of the hospital. I have to go to Hey, just stay here. Winnip glared at Laurent. It's your punishment. No, I want to see my granddaughters and little Gerlin. I haven't seen them in a long time. And that bastard, he can't take care of 2 kids. Oh, Winnip, bring my granddaughters to Sacramento. That bastard doesn't need to come. I don't want to see him. Winnip rolled her eyes at Laurent. If he dared to say something like that to Chen Zhao, he might just kill him. If you want little Gerlin and Larissa, tell Chun and Fei Lai yourself. I can't decide. Okay, just stay in the hospital. I have to catch a plane. Don't leave me in the hospital. Don't leave me in the hospital. I have to go to Winnip did not care about Lauren's cries behind her and strode away. Just like Laurent, she also wanted to see her 2 little granddaughters. Brother, where are you and my niece now? Mom, and I went to Mirror Lake and realized that your house is gone. Yura called Chun Zhao. Her mother was sitting in the driver's seat, although her face was expressionless. However, she was still very anxious. After all, Gerlin was still so young and Fei Lai was pregnant. Her due date seemed to be in 2 days. If a person cared, they would inevitably think the worst of things. Seeing that Chun Zhao's house had been flattened, Yura's mother couldn't help but worry. Would Fei Lai and Gerlin be hurt? Your sister-in-law had a baby, Chun Zhao said. We're staying at a hotel now. She already had a baby? Yura asked. Which hotel are you staying at? Yura's mother couldn't stay calm anymore. Was her second grandchild born? But the next moment, Yura's mother calmed down. Give me the phone. Yura's mother grabbed the phone. Chen Zhao, it's me. Did Fei Lai give birth? Is it a boy or a girl? Girl. What's the baby's name? Larissa. Not bad. Solid Fortress. Did you name it? Recently, Yura's mother had actually been counting the days with her fingers. She was waiting for Fei Lai to be born so that she could rush to the scene as soon as possible. That way, she would have the right to name it. Unfortunately, things didn't go as she wished. She was still 1 step behind. Chapter 14:19. Dad, why does little Larissa like to sleep so much? You used to be like this too. Kids love to sleep, but they love to move too. When Larissa could crawl, she wouldn't be able to stop. Kids had low stamina and their stomachs couldn't digest high-calorie food. Plus, every time they drank milk, it was either breast milk or cow's milk. Most of the nutrients were used for growth, so there wasn't much energy for babies to move around. Little Gerlin had gone through the same thing, but her weaning process was rather smooth. When a human grew to a certain stage, their need for food would definitely increase. Little Gerlin was very active. The nutrients provided by dairy products couldn't satisfy the human body's needs anymore. The human body would instinctively choose food with higher protein and more nutrients. Chun Zhao didn't understand the mentality of some giant babies who still ate milk as their staple food. Plus, it wouldn't be good for the kids. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai planned to bring little Gerlin and Larissa to stay at a hotel for a few days. After all, if they stayed at the headquarters, it would be inconvenient for Yura's and Fei Lai's mothers to visit them. Chun Zhao was obviously going to stay at Del and Risfar's Harbor Hotel. When Yura and Yura's mother came, they'd brought a lot of things. They were all baby products, just like when they'd visited little Gerlin before. Actually, many things were the same. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai had already prepared them. But in the eyes of the elders, they could only use what they'd prepared themselves. Others couldn't use what they'd prepared. Mom. Every time Chun Zhao and his mother met, they couldn't help but feel distant. His mother nodded. Where's little Larissa? Let me see. She's inside. Fei Lai's holding her. Grandma, aren't you here to see little Gerlin? Beside Chun Zhao, little Gerlin raised her head and looked at her mother with watery eyes. No way. Of course I'm here to see little Gerlin, darling. Mom picked up little Gerlin, kissing and rubbing her. Gerlin, can you stay at Grandma's place for a few days? Mom asked. No, I want to sleep with little Larissa. She'll cry if she doesn't see me. In the past 2 days, whenever Chun Zhao and Fei Lai weren't around, little Gerlin would definitely be talking to little Larissa. Moreover, he talked tirelessly and endlessly. Sometimes, she would fall asleep as she talked. When little Larissa grows up, I can teach little Larissa how to walk, swim, and climb trees. Chenjiao, your house was damaged by the typhoon. Yes, I've contacted the construction company and asked them to repair the villa. Then come live at my place for the next few months. No, Mom. I'm just going to stay in the hotel for a few days. The new house on the beach is almost done. Chen Zhao still rejected his mother's invitation. Mom was very disappointed, but this answer was expected. When her mother asked this question, she didn't have much hope. When Mother took little Larissa and Gerlin, who was already in her arms, the two little ones were in her arms. That was an unprecedented feeling of happiness. He couldn't bear to part with it and was reluctant to let it go. His mother stayed for 3 or 4 hours. Before she left, she gave them another lesson. It was as if the two of them were newbies. In fact, when Gerlin first came to their house, their mother had already taught them a lesson. Elders were all like this. All they wanted was to stay a little longer. Not long after his mother and Yura left, Winip came. She stayed right next to Chun Zhao and Fei Lai's suite. Winip was almost crazy with joy. She couldn't bear to put her granddaughter down after picking her up. Only when little Larissa needed milk did she reluctantly return her granddaughter to Fei Lai. Chun, come out. Let's talk. Chun Zhao followed Winip to the balcony. If your brewery goes all out, how many cans of beer can it produce? Right now, the brewery produces 3 types of beer. I can't calculate how many cans, but it should be around 600,000 liters a day. 600,000 liters of beer was around 1 million cans. Can't you increase the production? Winip, isn't 600,000 liters a day enough? It's not enough. Just a dozen or so stores in California are enough. Now, Mara Supermarket wants to expand across America. There are already 4 new stores outside of California ready to open. Winip, you're in contact with Denver, right? You'd better contact Denver about the specific production. Dash and Beer's only channel was Mara Supermarket, so Denver and Winip were in frequent contact. Winip had a rough understanding of the brewery situation. The production problem couldn't be solved in a short time. Ever since the Denver Beer Festival revealed that Dash and Beer and Daydream Beer were brewed by the same person, Dash and Beer became famous. Dash and Beer became famous, and its sales increased by several times. The identity of the Daydream Brewer was just too useful. Over the past 2 days, Mara's Supermarket had a large number of customers every morning. After the supermarket opened for business, they swarmed into the supermarket and started fighting for Dash and Beer. At noon, Dash and Beer would be sold out and Mara Supermarket's customer flow would visibly decrease. Winip saw this, which was why she was so anxious. Dash and Beer could bring a lot of customers to Mara Supermarket. At the same time, it could stabilize the customer flow. If someone was used to going to a supermarket, there was a high chance that they would go there again. Dash and Beer didn't just bring customers. It also brought market share. Chun, if you don't have money, I can invest in the brewery and expand its production. Winip didn't show any emotion when discussing business with Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. First of all, he didn't lack money. Second, the brewery could actually expand production. It was just that they lacked raw materials, so they didn't increase production immediately. Now, they were waiting for the wheat after the autumn harvest. Since Dash and Beer was already famous, they had to choose their raw materials carefully. Therefore, both Chun Zhao and Denver preferred to keep their raw materials under the premise of stable production. Kansas dangle wheat was the main raw material for Dash and Beer. The taste was already set. Unless the price of dangle wheat skyrocketed, they wouldn't change the raw material. Please remember this book's domain name, mobile version. Chapter 1420. Winip's suggestion was just a casual one. Even she knew that Chun Zhao wouldn't agree to it. In a company with a clear market prospect and strong profitability, as well as abundant liquidity, there was no way they could accept external funds. Dash and Beer's profitability was too strong. It didn't seem like a brand that had just entered the market. One had to know that Dash and Beer was only a medium-sized beer brand company. Its profitability was already comparable to large beer brands. This was what Winip was most jealous of. After all, Dash and Beer wasn't a listed company. The money would all go into Chun Zhao's pocket. However, the money wasn't limitless. More accurately, production wasn't limitless. If it was another brewery, they could produce limitless. If it didn't have enough production, they could open branches and increase production infinitely. But Dash and Beer couldn't do that. One of the raw materials of Dash and Beer was Mirror Lake's water. Mirror Lake's water mainly came from the waterfall. The waterfall's flow was limited. The waterfall's flow was also the brewery's upper limit. Of course, it was still very difficult to reach the waterfall's upper limit. At least with their current production, they were still very far from the upper limit. Winnip's arrival gave Chun Zhao and Fei Lai a rare moment of leisure. They could spend some alone time. Winnip wanted nothing more than to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa on her own. To her, this was the greatest happiness. Chun Zhao finally didn't have to worry about Fei Lai's health anymore. They could fool around for the whole day. They didn't have to care about anything else and only cared about their own happiness. Just then, Chun Zhao and Fei Lai were interrupted by a phone call. "Hey Chun Zhao, it's Li Qiong." "Oh, Li Qiong, when are you free?" The next day after the storm, Chun Zhao called Li Qiong. He'd said before that he needed her to install and debug the butler system. Li Qiong also had a job, so she promised Chun Zhao that she would call Chun Zhao after arranging the work. "After today, I'll be free." Li Qiong's laughter came from the phone. "Did you quit?" Chun Zhao vaguely understood what Li Qiong meant. "The company doesn't allow me to ask for leave, so I could only quit," Li Qiong said helplessly. "Oh, it seems that I caused you to lose your job. I'm really sorry." "Are you kidding? You have to pay me $400,000, but my weekly salary is less than $3,000. Even an idiot would know what to choose." Li Qiong chatted casually with Chun Zhao. "Right, what did you study in university?" "I'm philosophy and artificial intelligence," Li Qiong said. "Philosophy and artificial intelligence? Isn't there too much of a difference between these two majors? You're not an expert in this field, so you might not know that the current technological development of artificial intelligence is largely based on the human philosophical system. So these two disciplines are far from being as biased as you think." "All right, do you have time tomorrow?" "If I have time tomorrow, I'll ask the security company to send the equipment over." "No problem. I'll contact you tomorrow." "All right." Chun Zhao had just hung up and was about to continue being intimate with Fei Lai when his phone rang again. "Hello, Mr. Andrews. What can I do for you?" "Mr. Chun, I should congratulate you," Andrews said in a polite tone. "Congratulations on the huge success of your company." As the person directly in charge of Chun Zhao's finances, Andrews was like Chun Zhao's steward. He knew all of Chun Zhao's funds like the back of his hand. Of course, he also knew that the popular Dash and Beer was Chun Zhao's private property. If the tax bureau asked Andrews to investigate Chun Zhao and Andrews was willing to cooperate, Chun Zhao would definitely lose a lot of money. Of course, Andrews would not do such a thing. He was the most professional financial steward. His first duty was to protect his client's private property. However, Andrews really admired Chun Zhao from the bottom of his heart. To him, Chun Zhao had invested so much money into building a beer brand. It was a thankless effort. At least in the next 3 years, Andrews predicted that Chun Zhao would either lose a lot of money and accept the loan agreement from the bank, or he would not be able to survive. However, no one expected Dash and Beer to be so popular. Currently, Chun Zhao had invested around $60 million, but the market value had already reached $1 billion. What kind of concept was this? In just half a year, Dash and Beer's return was more than 15 times. Moreover, the market prospects were very good. He believed that Dash and Beer's market value would increase further. Of course, the banks wanted to enter the market as soon as possible. The earlier they enter the market, the more profits they would get. Just like Penguin and TB in China, the original shares were the most valuable. Even the banks could not sit still. Who wouldn't want to share in the face of such huge profits? "You're not just congratulating me, right?" "Huh, Mr. Chun, do you intend to accept external investments?" "It's still too early," Chun Zhao said. Right now, Dash and Beer was limited by its production and distribution rate, so it was only valued at a little over $1 billion. Chen Zhao was confident that he could multiply Dash and Beer's value. By then, if others wanted to enter the market, it would not be just a few tens of millions of dollars. Chen Zhao also knew that he could not hold all the shares in his hands forever. When necessary, he would still have to give away the shares. Otherwise, if he made too much money, others would definitely be jealous and cause trouble at various stages. It would be really hard to defend against that. However, Chen Zhao could stall for time. Before Dash and Beer's value reached his expectations, he could hold on to the shares for now. Andrews thought for a moment and said, "Our bank is willing to buy Mr. Chen's shares at a 200% premium." Chen Zhao gasped. "Is this Amira's idea?" "No, it's a decision made by the higher-ups of the bank after discussion." Andrews' meaning was clear. The bank's 200% premium made the bank bear a lot of risk. If Dash and Beer's value didn't increase as expected, the bank would lose a lot. But similarly, if the value increased or even exceeded expectations, the bank would make money. Risk and profit definitely existed together. Even if Chen Zhao knew that his Dash and Beer could make money, he could not stop the bank from making money. He would wait until the market value was high before letting the bank in. The bank was not stupid. Chapter 1421. If the bank can agree to one condition, Chen Zhao said, "I'll accept the bank buying my shares." Usually, there were two ways to enter the market. One was to buy shares, and the other was to inject capital. Dash and Beer didn't need a large capital injection. If it did, it wouldn't benefit Chen Zhao at all. Instead, it would dilute his shares. If he bought shares, it would be a real transaction. Money and goods would be exchanged. In the long run, it would be like splitting Chen Zhao's profits and giving part of the money to the bank. However, Chen Zhao could obtain a large amount of profits in a short time. What condition? First, if the bank wants to sell the shares, they have to sell them to me at the market price. At the same time, the bank can't interfere with Dash and Beer's production and management. Then only dividends? Andrews asked. When will dividends start? Next year. Dash and Beer isn't a public company, after all. Then how many shares can you transfer? 20%. Can it be more? Andrews asked. No, I've already given 20% to the company's executives. I can't give away any more. I'll report Mr. Chen's idea to the higher-ups. Okay, I'll wait for your good news. After hanging up, Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered with Fei Lai anymore. He picked up his phone and called Denver. Denver, in the next 30 days, try to increase the production of the beer factory. It's best if the sales are as high as possible. The bank wants to buy my shares at a 200% premium. I understand, Mr. Chen. Denver's heart jumped. Mr. Chen, I hope to buy 5% as soon as possible. Of course, we're family. If Denver continued to drag it out, his personal price wouldn't be low either. If even the bank was willing to pay a 200% premium, it meant that the bank was very optimistic about Dash and Beer's potential. As Dash and Beer sales increased, its valuation would also increase. By then, the price he would pay for the shares would also increase. If possible, he also wanted to buy 20% directly like the bank. However, he didn't have that much cash. Plus, he didn't have the courage to take 5% first. With 5% of the shares in his hands, he wouldn't lose too much even if he lost too much. It was within his acceptable range. If he made a profit, he'd have more capital to buy the shares Chen Zhao promised. Chen Zhao had promised Denver and the bank 40%, but he still had one key point. That was the right of first refusal. Even if someone bought the shares at a price 10 or 100 times higher, Chen Zhao would still have the right of first refusal, and he would buy them at the market price. Unless Chen Zhao didn't want to buy, the shares wouldn't go away. Now, Chen Zhao just had to wait for Dash and Beer. Then, he could delay the negotiation with the bank. By then, a 200% premium would be 3 times the market price. A market price of $1 billion is equivalent to a price of $3 billion. For 20% of the shares, the bank would have to pay at least $600 million US. Thinking that he could earn $600 million in one go, Chen Zhao felt like he was floating in the air. However, if he had to pay tax on the $600 million, he would have to pay at least $200 million. By then, Chun Zhao would actually get more than $300 million. Shouldn't have. So he had to Chunny, he. This legal tax avoidance required the help of the bank, and this transaction was originally done with the bank, so the bank would definitely cooperate with him. As the person in charge of Dashin Beer, Denver only said a few words in the media, which directly caused the number of customers in Mara's supermarket to increase several times. Although there was only so much beer available, the number of customers skyrocketed. According to Denver, the current production of Big Mountain beer was at most 800,000 liters a day. Those customers who originally planned to buy or had this idea all flocked to the supermarket as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to buy it. In fact, most customers couldn't buy beer. Winip knocked on the door of the other room they'd booked. She pulled Chun Zhao aside and said a bunch of things. Chun Zhao's attitude was clear. Personal feelings were personal feelings, and business was business. Winip couldn't do anything. Unless she said something harsh to Chun Zhao, he wouldn't compromise on this. Winip also wanted the shares of Mountain Beer, but how could Chun Zhao give them to her? He sold it to the bank because the bank gave him a 200% premium. It was sold to Denver because Denver was an executive of Dashin Beer. One could even say that he was the main contributor. What about Winip? Putting aside personal feelings, could Winip give him a 200% premium? Usually, as a supplier, they were always restricted by the channel and had to look at the channel's mood. But that was a buyer's market, while Dashin Beer was a seller's market. It wasn't whether he could sell it or not, but whether he was willing to sell it or not. Therefore, from a business perspective, Winip couldn't threaten Chun Zhao. Instead, she had to worry if Chun Zhao would tear up the contract and start supplying to other supermarkets. Of course, Chun Zhao and Winip's cooperation was quite pleasant for now. They didn't plan on tearing up the contract. As for the dispute in the past 2 days, it was just a small conflict. It couldn't even be considered a conflict. Actually, Chun Zhao knew that his business talent was limited. He only knew the basic business rules. If the price was right, sell. If not, don't. If there was money, invest. If not, don't. It was a simple business rule. As for the more complicated operations in the financial system, Chun Zhao really didn't understand them, so he wouldn't touch them. For example, funds, stocks, and so on. With Chun Zhao's knowledge, even a few $100 million would be wasted if he played with them. The next day, Chun Zhao brought his family to Mingyue Villa. Chun, why is it called Mingyue Villa? Winip teased Jerlin as she looked at the buildings on the cliff in the distance. Because I think the name is cool, Chun Zhao said matter-of-factly. Chun Zhao's naming skills were really lacking. Even Larissa's name had been obtained by throwing darts. Chun Zhao's brain was about to explode if he had to name a villa. After thinking about it, he decided to use a more China-style name. Chun Zhao was considering if he should give Mingyue Villa a more iconic name. What kind of logo should he make? Chun Zhao thought about it, but couldn't think of anything. Firstly, it couldn't be low class. Secondly, it could represent Mingyue Villa. Chapter 1422. Chun Zhao had been thinking about what kind of beauty he should get. Dad, what are you thinking about? Jerlin looked at Chun Zhao, as if she'd sensed something. Baby, do you think our new home is still lacking something? A moon in the sky. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. He was already very powerful, but he still didn't have the ability to hang a moon in the sky. Wait, it wasn't completely impossible. Old Turtle's internal alchemy could be considered a moon. However, it seemed too high profile to hang Old Turtle's inner core in the sky. Forget it. I'm just letting my imagination run wild. Dad, did you think of something? Jerlin was too smart. She could guess most of it from Chun Zhao's expression. Winip, who sat in the front, thought it was a child's babbling. The car stopped. They'd arrived at Mingyue Villa. At this time, the inside and outside of the Mingyue Villa were filled with construction vehicles and workers. When Felwood heard that Chun Zhao was here, he immediately rushed over. Mr. Chun, you're here. Yes. Did the security company send the mainframe over? Yes. They're installing it in the basement, but the people for debugging and installation aren't here yet. Okay, I'll call and ask. Chun Zhao called Li Qiong and asked when she could arrive. Li Qiong was already on her way. She'd left early, but because Mingyue Beach was rather remote, she'd taken the wrong way. Now, she was turning back. Half an hour later, Li Qiong finally arrived. When she reached the bottom of the cliff, Li Qiong was also shocked by the majestic manor. It had to be said that Mingwei Villa wasn't very big. At least, Amir's manor was much bigger than Mingwei Villa when she'd attended the party last time. But the key was the shape and location of Mingwei Villa. It gave people a very shocking feeling. After passing through a steep slope of more than 10 degrees, Chen Zhao drove for about 1,000 meters to the top of the cliff and parked the car in an empty space outside the manor. When Li Qiong got out, she saw Chen Zhao and a beautiful woman beside him. "Chen Zhao," Li Qiong greeted. "This is my girlfriend, Fei Lai." "Hello, Miss Fei Lai." Li Qiong walked up and shook hands with her. "This is my classmate from China. He's also the one who helped me install the butler system. Have you sent the mainframe?" Li Qiong went straight to the point after exchanging pleasantries with the two. "It's already here. The people from that company are installing the mainframe." "Yes. Where's the mainframe installed? Take me there." Chen Zhao brought Li Qiong to the basement. The manor's basement had 3 floors, one more than Mirror Lake Villas. One of the floors was used to install the housekeeper's mainframe. At the same time, there were dozens of monitors. Li Qiong communicated with the people from the security company. The people from the security company left after they finished installing the mainframe. They were only responsible for selling and installing the mainframes. As for the debugging of the system, it was up to the customers to find someone to install it. At first, Li Qiong was a little unfamiliar with it. After all, it was her first time coming into contact with this kind of mainframe system. However, she soon got the hang of it and connected to the company's satellite system. At the same time, a satellite surveillance image appeared on the largest monitor in the middle. "Chen Zhao, this is the image of the main control satellite. The other displays are used for monitoring devices. If someone destroys the monitoring devices, the satellite will automatically lock onto the area. If it's at night, can the satellite detect it?" The principles of satellite surveillance and video surveillance are different. Satellites are divided into ultra-close range surveillance, heat source surveillance, sensor surveillance, dynamic surveillance, and sound surveillance. Moreover, this company's satellites have 4 types of surveillance at the same time. For example, this is the case. Li Qiong started demonstrating. She said into the microphone, "Turn to the beach surveillance and analyze all suspicious creatures." Then, the image on the main monitor started jumping. In the end, a picture of a heat source appeared. There are more than 10 heat sources in the picture. Through analysis, there are 11 people in this area. They all belong to Felwood Engineering Company. No bad records. A gentle female voice sounded. Chen Zhao's eyes brightened. This voice was more advanced than the housekeeper system's voice in Mirror Lake Villa. Moreover, through this kind of surveillance, everyone's identity could be analyzed. He had to admit that this function was really powerful. "Turn to sound surveillance," Li Qiong said. Now, other than the image, there's also a lot of noise on the main monitor. It was impossible to distinguish the voices. "Hey, Rod, where are we going tonight?" "Golden Sea Bar. Want to go together?" "Sure." This was the sound that the computer had analyzed, reorganized, and converted into sound. Chen Zhao really didn't expect technology to reach such a level. Of course, it was only for the rich now. Then, Li Qiong started demonstrating other surveillance modes. This company's housekeeper system is like the AI in Iron Man, Jarvis. It's very powerful and can even do some simple communication. As long as it's connected to the internet, it can be upgraded every time the company .s the system. It also ensures that the hardware won't be obsolete in the next 5 years. In other words, if the company upgrades the hardware in the next 5 years, they have a responsibility to upgrade your main system too. This was normal. After all, including the installation and debugging, the machine had been bought for nearly $10 million. If it was obsolete in 1 or 2 years, no one would be happy, no matter how rich they were. "Chen Zhao, you have pets at home, right?" Yes. There is a pet's characteristic image generated here. Bring your pet to this monitor and let the system record your pet's photo and characteristics. Then, your pet will run to a corner to play. If you can't find it for a while, You can use the butler system to immediately find your pet's location. Moreover, it can distinguish some creatures that are harmful to your pet. Once your pet is threatened, it will immediately alert you. Okay, that's good. Also, there seem to be sharks in this area. You can also use this system to scan and monitor sharks. If a shark appears near your beach, it can alert you immediately. Chun Zhao started to feel that this system was really awesome. It was much better than the housekeeper system. It was really powerful. Is technology so advanced now? Actually, there are many new technologies in the world, which are what we often call black technology. Some of them are quite suitable for rich people like you. Oh, recommend some to me. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.